Do so, and no more lives will be lost. You have won a few victories, yes, and killed a mighty dragon, but you cannot hope to defeat us, even when we are alone and none of the royal armies have come to join us," said Uncle Tyok. "And that's it, is it? All is forgiven? No hostages or increased taxes?" asked the Mandaeali with crossed arms. "Well, of course. There must be punishments for your crimes and treasons," said Roland Crickehall. "Perhaps your daughter will be our guest at Casterly Rock." "I'm sure that my own daughter will welcome having her as her handmaiden," Jaime added, hoping to goad Prydain Stark into doing something stupid. Starks. All brawn and no brains. But instead he felt unnerved, slightly, at his hateful glare. Prydain Stark grabbed his helm and placed it on his head once more before twitching slightly and then growling at him. "We'll see each other again on the battlefield, Lannister. And when we do, there will be no such civility." "I look forward to it," Jaime said eagerly and with an arrogant smile. The Northerners climbed onto their horses and began to ride away. At camp, Jaime met with the bannermen of the Westerlands and began to plan their battle as they looked at the terrain of where their lucky scouts, known as the Undaunted Vanguard, had spotted them. They were called lucky, because they were their only scouts whom hadn't been eaten or simply killed by packs of wolves that seemed to be following them everywhere they marched, and because of which, their march was slowed and they made very little progress. "They've gone cross-country," Sir Jaime said. The scout commander, Loron's best friend Oliver Sarsfield. "Cross-country?" he asked. "Yes. They crossed from Brindlewood and across the God's Eye River and have made camp here, on the Gold Road," said Oliver Sarsfield, as he was pointing out his own directions on the map. "Why have they gone cross-country?" asked Hayes SWYFT. "To lure us into a trap." "That's what I would do." "But even I would never think of going cross-country," admitted Daemon Marbrand, Jaime's good father. Before anyone could make a plan, Jaime had made his perfectly clear. "We march this afternoon. These damned Northerners have been making us chase after them all the way from the God's Eye to here, for weeks. We will end their rebellion and make the North bleed for every Westerman who has been killed by them, from the first rebellion to our scouts gored by their pet wolves." Jaime was determined to not lose this chance for victory. He would defeat their army and earn a glory that would see him recorded gloriously in the annals and histories of House Lannister and see him given a worthy place in the Hall of Heroes in Casterly Rock. That afternoon, they marched as fast as they could under Jaime's instruction and towards where Oliver Sarsfield had spotted them. Jaime soon saw the tracks made by the enemy and what they had used to cross a ford of the God's Eye River. Pontoon bridges. Just like they have been crossing various rivers, fords and streams across the Riverlands, and now the Crown Lands. Jaime turned to see Uncle Tijet ride to his side. "You're in command, Jaime. What say you?" he asked. "We march across this ford. And fast, before the Northerners attack us with our guard down," Jaime said as the Westerlords joined him. Jaime saw Loron ride alongside his friends Reynold and Lucan. He nodded at him and smiled at his son. "I'm so proud of you, Loron," Jaime thought with a proud smile before he turned back to the pontoon bridge. Jaime led the Knights of Casterly Rock, followed closely behind by Uncle Stafford whom led the Red Cloaks of Lannisport. Jaime's ears pricked up when he heard a chilling and familiar sound, one which he hadn't heard for many years. The blaring of a northern war horn. Jaime turned around and drew his sword as many knights at his side drew theirs, and Jaime turned to see a hill overlooking the ford. At least 100 cavalrymen sat on the hilltop, not moving at all underneath the banner of 3 sentinel trees of House Tallheart. Jaime pointed his sword at them, all of whom did not move, but watched them. "What are they doing?" "Sir Gregor." "Kill them," Jaime said, turning to the impatient and bloodthirsty gigantic brute. With pleasure he gruffly boomed before he drew his enormous great sword and shouted to his horsemen. "Kill those northern cunts." He roared long and loud as he charged towards them with his men, numbering at least 500 horsemen of Clegane's keep. But before his men were even within 100 meters distance of the hill, another war horn blasted and the horsemen began firing on Clegane and his men, before they began to ride away. "After the cunts!" Clegane shouted at his men, with 2 arrows sticking out of his breastplate, but not piercing him. Before they could chase after them, Jaime could hear a thundering sound of charging horses and men. Jaime looked around and saw Northerners on foot and on horseback either charging or shooting at them. "Fall back! Fall back across the water!" Jaime commanded. Clegane followed him with his men as Jaime began shouting for the army to get into formation, but then he heard another of the damned northern war horns. What the fuck is it now? Jaime got his answer when he looked to both flanks of the farmland plain, which was empty of life, except for the Westerland's army. Jaime was wrong, for he saw thousands of northerners march on them, where they had exposed flanks and no defensive positions. Chapter 46, The Dragonspawn Comes. Chapter Text. Interlude 18, Pin Page. Joramun Raider, Honors Fidaraeus. Joramun eagerly clanged his axe head against his shield alongside the men of Frostford and Clan Raider as they marched on the Lannister rear. Can't wait to kill some more Southerners, he thought with a grin as he caught sight of the vast army of Westermen. The Westermen all seemed to be panicking and trying to get into a hasty formation. Prydane's plan was brilliant. Building pontoons a mile down just as they were crossing this one and allowing us to surround the fuckers, he thought as he clanged his axe head against his shield one last time before roaring and jeering at them with his men and father's men. For the north. Slaughter these southern shits. Tormund roared from the front. For the north. Joramun shouted before he charged down at them. Hold the line, boys. Don't let these savage bastards break the line, came a shout from a Westerlord sat atop an armored horse, with a gold lion image on his cape as he drew his sword. Remember the king. Remember King Eddard, shouted Wendell Marndaly as he rode alongside the Knights of White Harbor, lances in hand. The Knights of White Harbor were the first to break through the lines of the Westermen. Followed closely behind by the men of Clans Raider, Giantsbane and Thun. Joramun buried his axe into the skull of a man trying to throw a spear. He took up his spear and threw it at an oncoming knight. The spear impaled through the skull of the horse rather than hit the rider, as Joramun had hoped. The knight pulled himself up after falling onto the grass. He furiously threw down his lance and threw his sword and charged at Joramun. Joramun blocked the first few blows with his shield before he caught his sword with his axe's hook and then slammed his shield down onto the knight's sword. Before he could draw a dagger, Joramun sliced his axe across the knight's neck, splitting it half off. Joramun faced a screaming soldier charging at him with a pike. He dodged the pike and cut down on it with his axe and then slammed his shield across his face twice before he fell to the ground. He then buried his axe into the back of a man trying to stab one of his men, whom had fallen on his back. He pulled up the man and turned to fight his next opponent. Joramun stood facing a knight armed with a mace and shield, wearing the livery of a unicorn of House Brax. I can't believe I thought that learning the sigils of southern houses was useless. I'm glad that Father and Maester Dennickmund forced me to learn, otherwise I'd have spent too much time drinking, fighting and fucking. The knight swung his mace at Joramun several times, smashing into his shield. Every time that his mace struck his shield, Joramun grunted in pain. He lifted his mace up high and struck down on Joramun, though he blocked with his shield yet again, and then he slammed his axe onto his foot. The knight screamed as he fell and landed on his back, and then Joramun smashed his axe into the knight's face. Joramun cut down a man carrying a large Volge and then beheaded a soldier who tried to backstab him. He took the Volge and threw it at an archer, whom was impaled by the ferocity of the blow as he fell on his back and the Polion broke in half from the impact. A sudden hit to his back forced him to the ground. Joramun spat out dirt when he looked up to see a knight, whom threw down a used lance and drew a longsword. Joramun pulled himself up and then grabbed the knight by his saddled foot and pulled him down, his longsword flying out of his grasp and piercing into the ground. The knight, seeing his sword was far away, unsheathed his dagger and sliced across at Joramun. He blocked it with his shield and then chopped down onto his skull, splitting it in half. Joramun waved his axe around to get the knight's brains off of his axe before he came face to face with two more southerners. One held a spear and the other had a sword and shield. The spearman struck at Joramun's chest, which he blocked with his shield whilst striking his axe down on the swordsman's own shield, and as he did so, he remembered a trick taught to him by Tormund Giantsbane, father's best friend. To rid a man of his shield, you strike at the corner of the shield if you have an axe. Hook into the edge and pull it down as hard and as fast as you can. They won't be expecting that, and that'll give you the chance you need to split his head open. Just make sure you carve into it fast enough, before he uses his brains to fight back to keep his brains safe from your axe. Joramun struck again down onto his shield and hooked his axe onto the shield's upper right corner, and he yanked it hard down, disarming him of his shield, and then he punched his face with his axe hand. The spearman used this to try and stab Joramun. Joramun narrowly dodged the thrust and then swung his shield across his face, knocking him down and breaking his nose. Joramun faced the swordsman, whom tried to run at Joramun, but he jumped back, narrowly missing the first slice and then the second. But the third slice came at his helm, and gashed his face from his ear to lips. Joramun grunted in pain and hammered both his shield and axe onto him, finally knocking his sword from his grasp. Finally, Joramun carved his axe into the man's chest. He grunted a few times painfully before Joramun yanked his axe out. The swordsman fell to his knees and then landed on his face. Joramun panted as he looked up to see a Westerlord mounted on an armored horse, and he was cutting his sword down and slicing the throat of one of his men. This lord wore a cloak which bore the sigil of the Black Manticore of House Lork. Is that Amory Lork? Good. I've always wanted to kill a southern lord. Especially when he has killed one of my men. Joramun ran toward Lork and chopped his axe onto his leg. Southern scum! Joramun yelled. Northern barbarian, shouted Lork. But the blow came too fast, for it missed his leg, but hit his saddle and his horse. The horse reared up and Lork fell down from his horse, landing on his back. Joramun thought he heard bones crack as he landed on the ground. He ran toward him as he tried to pull himself up as his horse ran away. Joramun stood above him and stood on his sword's handle. Still think I'm a barbarian? Joramun asked as he raised his axe in the air. Mercy. Mercy, my lord, please, the coward begged before Joramun carved his axe into his skull, spilling blood and brains onto the already blood-soaked soil. Lannister coward. Joramun turned to watch as Prydain charged across what seemed like an entire ocean of men charging toward him. But the Prince of the Wolfswood was not discouraged, and he charged through them, swiftly cutting down over 24 men before reaching Jaime Lannister and other Westerlords. Kill the fucking scum, Prydain, Joramun thought with a grin. Jaime 13. Block. Slice. Stab. Jaime pulled his sword out of another northern soldier, one whom wore heraldry of the crisscrossed axes of House Dustin. But it seemed to Jaime that no matter how many he killed, there were still more of them, and far more of his own men were being slaughtered. Jaime was confused when he saw men whom looked Essozi in origin amongst the northerners. They wore light armors and wore pelts of tigers covering their backs and had ink carvings on their faces of various images. Their weaponry and equipment were exotic. And yet they fought incredibly, far more impressive than their northern allies. Since when did the northerners hire Essozi sellswords? Did they turn cloak after White Walls and Hog Hall? Jaime, we must get out of here. He turned to Lyle, whose sword and armor were blooded, as well as Adam, whom walked with a limp and a damaged greave over his left leg. We can push them back. Jaime insisted. We can do fuck all. Those fuckers have trapped us and swamped us. The only way we can save us and most of what is left of us is if we break through and escape. Adam snapped. No, I must find him. I must find Prydain Stark. And once I do, I kill him and end this war for good. Jaime. Jaime turned to see Leo, who stared with his eyes opened wide and his mouth fallen to the ground at something behind him. What the fuck is he asked, pointing his finger at something. Jaime turned to what Leo was pointing at and couldn't quite believe what he saw. He knew whom he was just from looking at his fearsome helm. Prydain Stark, chopping and slicing men down with just one blow and charging straight toward him. His speed and strength seemed unnatural as he caught a spear thrown at him and hurled it back at the man who threw it, impaling him and forcing him back 10 feet and knocking into 6 men huddled together. 2 knights attacked him simultaneously with swords raised to cut down. Prydain blocked one with ice, and punched the head of the other. Jaime gasped when he saw the knight's head separate from his neck, just from that single punch. Not even the mountain could do that. The other knight dropped his sword at seeing his comrade die from a single punch. Prydain turned to him and headbutted him. The knight collapsed to the ground, dead, with his helm crushed as though smashed into by Robert Baratheon's warhammer. Jaime saw how he turned around, seemingly facing Jaime as 6 men charged at him simultaneously. Jaime felt a shiver as he could have sworn he felt his eyes bore into him. For the first time in a long time, Jaime felt a desire to run rather than fight him. "Lannister coward," he roared as he beheaded those 6 men with one blow. Just hearing him shout as such chilled Jaime to his feet. What in the fucking 7 hells is he? If I die here, at least I will die at the hand of a more than worthy opponent. He lifted his sword up high and sliced a knight in half before he started to sprint towards Jaime, cutting down dozens of men in his charge. He slowed down when he came within spitting distance of Jaime and his companions. "Organize the retreat. Now," Jaime ordered as he pointed his sword at him. He could hear him grunt and growl wolfishly behind his helm as he stared at him. Jaime could see his eyes, and was terrified. Previously he had seen his eyes as a beautiful and haunting violet color. But now the eyes were as red as blood and seemed so full of hatred and terror as he stared at him, wielding ice. In spite of how terrifying it was to look into those dark and terrible eyes, Jaime couldn't draw his own eyes away from them. Both his sword and his armor were completely soaked in blood as he pointed ice at Jaime. He growled quietly as he pointed ice at Jaime, but then, he twitched his head to his right slightly and growled quietly again. He stabbed ice into the ground and turned around. Jaime was too surprised to even think of striking him down, and looked at where he was looking. Unmistakably, he was looking at a giant of a knight riding towards Jaime and Prydain Stark, wielding an enormous great sword that was as large as Jaime. But even with the mountain that rides charging straight toward him, Prydain Stark did not move at all. He stood there, motionless and awaiting for Clegane, who lowered his lance and pointed it at him. "You're mine, fucking Stark!" Clegane yelled as he came within a stone's throw away from the Prince of the Wolfswood. But as he came closer, Prydain Stark merely sidestepped out of the way. Jaime opened his mouth wide as he grabbed the mountain's horse by its chin and its bridle and lifted it up and threw both horse and rider back 10 feet. How in the 7 fucking hells did he do that? The mountain had fallen off of his horse as it landed. He furiously threw away his lance and grabbed his great sword and charged toward the young Stark. "Come, little doggy. Come and fight the direwolf," shouted the Stark prince. Being called little doggy seemed to infuriate the mountain even more, if that was even possible. He sliced his great sword across at him, but he dodged the blow as if it was effortless. When the mountain sliced at him again, he chopped ice down on Clegane's sword, shattering it to pieces, and then sliced onto his helmeted head. The mountain grunted before he threw his broken helm away and charged straight at Prydain Stark. Prydain stabbed ice into the ground as the mountain reached for him with his bare hands. The Stark prince grabbed both of his hands and Jaime was shocked to hear the mountain scream as he was forced to his knees and his gauntlets were being crunched from the mere brute force of Stark's hands. The Stark prince laughed cruelly as the mountain fell to his knees and then onto his back. Prydain grabbed him by his foot and lifted him up before he repeatedly smashed him onto the ground before dropping him. "Puny dog," he growled before turning to Jaime whilst Clegane whimpered slightly. Why the fuck was I so stupid as to taunt him? Jaime felt a cold shiver crawl down his spine as Prydain Stark now faced him and reached for his sword. Jaime's arm shook as he pointed his sword at the growling Stark. But before the Stark boy could even touch ice, Clegane grabbed him by his leg. He condescendingly looked down at Clegane before grabbing his right arm with his right hand. "Stupid dog," he muttered before effortless yanking Clegane's arm, and Jaime watched in horror as the mountain's arm was literally ripped out, tearing his limbs. As the mountain screamed, Prydain Stark swung Clegane's arm at his head, and Jaime watched as his head was separated from the rest of his gigantic body. "Now you have no one to hide behind, fucking Lannister backstabber," the Stark prince grunted as he dropped Clegane's arm and faced him again, grabbing ice and drawing it from the soil. Jaime stood ready and grabbed a shield from a fallen soldier as Stark held up ice with one hand and with his other, he took off his fearsome helm. Jaime never would have fought with a shield, but now, he was terrified to fight him without one. Stark's beautiful and handsome face was covered in the blood of other men, but Jaime was surprised to see his eyes were violet once again. "You took part in the attack on my parents. You backstabbed my father. It's because of you that your evil sister and your fucking monstrous nephew torture him in that fucking shithole of a capital. And, just a few hours ago, You threatened my little girl, he accused, each word said with such fury and hatred directed at Jaime after dropping his helm, shaking his head as he mentioned the last part. During his monologue, Jaime began to feel a fear he never thought he would have felt since his day serving the Mad King. And once more, Jaime felt a powerful desire to run rather than fight him. Prydain roared as he struck ice down on Jaime's shield. Though it protected his arm, it smashed into two halves. Fuck. Jaime grunted as he felt the pain of the shield's breaking. He thrusted at him, but he sidestepped easily and cut down onto Jaime's sword, shattering it to pieces before he smacked Jaime's breastplate like he would have swatted a fly. But that single blow sent Jaime flying and landing on two dead men and banging his head against another man's helm. That blow had cracked and dented his breastplate, and he was sure that he heard bones break as he landed. And he could feel blood swim down his head from where his forehead had hit the helm. But Jaime felt so much pain that he didn't scream. Help. A damn. Lyle. Help me, he tried to say, but was unable. He could barely breathe without feeling the sharp pain come back to silence him. Loron. Where is he? Where's my boy? Blood dribbled down his lips and his chin. And his vision blurred as blood poured onto his eyes. But even so, he could hear and sense a presence walk toward him. Father! Father, he heard from far away. No, Loron. Get away. Get away before he sees you, Jaime tried to scream. Come, little Lannister. I won't kill you or your father. But I just want to say something to him first, before I let you all go, he heard Prydain Stark say. Thank the gods. Jaime reached for his eyes and wiped the blood that was pouring into them, but as he did so, he felt as though his ribs were on fire, with the way he felt the pain. As he looked up, he could see Loron to his front, and Prydain Stark standing above him before kneeling down to face him. He grabbed him by the collar of his breastplate and lifted him off of the ground. Jaime could feel his feet hanging in the air. Do you deny that you backstabbed my father? He whispered. No, he admitted, croaking as he spoke. And again, he was hurt from just speaking. Kill me, but don't hurt him. I could kill you right now, Lannister. You saw how I slaughtered your men and your father's overgrown dog. But, I want you to live and suffer for all that you've done to my house and to my family. Father. Rhaegar. Cersei. What the fuck have you done? You've unleashed this godlike terror on us all. And, I want you to know, that Lannisters aren't the only ones who pay their debts. So, listen well. Listen to the news of when my army and I march to destroy that which you Lannisters love most. And when you do, you will know that all debts are paid between House Stark and House Lannister. And when you see Rhaegar, your father and your sister, tell them that winter is coming. He let go of Jaime, letting him fall back onto the corpses of his men, and walked away, gesturing to Loron. Take your father, little Lannister, and leave this place. Jaime's vision was blurring, he felt he was drifting and did not have the strength to keep his eyes open. No, not like this. Not when I can't see Loron. Chapter 47, Marching on the West. Chapter text. Prydain 13. What losses did we suffer? Prydain asked as he met the bannerman in his pavilion. Less than 1,000 dead, my prince. And 2,000 wounded. But the Lannister losses were far greater than ours, said Willis Marndaly. Oh. 30,000 dead and another 35,000 wounded, my prince. The rest have all retreated, said Wendell Marndaly. Crushing the Lannister army will scare the Targaryens into reinforcing their armies, my prince. We aren't ready to directly confront them yet, not when our allies in Dorne, the Riverlands, the Stormlands and the Vale are still gathering their forces, said Roose Bolton. That is true, my lord. But, we will not be staying here for long. Not in the Crownlands or the Riverlands, said Prydain. What do you mean, my prince? Asked Mance Rayder. Prydain gestured to the map and pointed at the Gold Road. I didn't choose the Gold Road because of the geography and the layout of rivers and fords, Prydain announced. Looking around, he glanced at Roose Bolton and Mance Rayder, and he noticed how they reacted, as though they immediately understood his intentions. You intend to invade the Westerlands, my prince? Asked Roose Bolton. Hearing that, all other bannermen turned to Prydain with mixed reactions of surprise, shock or amazement. Halric, Artos, Deanna, Arya, Ulrich and Rickon all looked at him in bewilderment. Tywin Lannister made his choice when he allied himself with the Targaryens, and his poxy bitch of a daughter married Rhaegar. For that, and for taking part in the attack on our king, we will invade the Westerlands. Without their army and not expecting us to come, we shall head for the Golden Tooth. Once we cross into the Westerlands, we march on Casterly Rock and Lannisport and take that which Lannisters love the most. Their home, which they think gives them the right to look down on all others as though they were gods. Saying that reminded him of when he cornered and defeated Jaime Lannister and gave him his message for the three Prydain hated the most. The great army of the West, supposedly the best in all Westeros, broken in one great battle. What a stain that shall forever be on Tywin Lannister's precious legacy. But the deadliest blow to him and his legacy will be when I take Casterly Rock and Lannisport. What is your plan, my prince? Asked Rickard Karstark. We rest here for a few days, my lord. And then we march on the Gold Road until we reach the Golden Tooth. We take the castle and then we cross into the Westerlands and get to Lannisport and the Rock. Once we take both, we'll use the port to bring reinforcements from the north. Now, what say you, my lords and ladies? Prydain asked. The great Jon was the foremost man to raise his voice. Aye. The Lannisters think themselves so fucking high and mighty. This will remind them that they are fucking humans. Aye, my prince. This will send a clear message to all allied to the Wolf Prey, said Roose Bolton with a slight approving smile. Not only that, but it'll give our allies better morale and make them believe in victory over the fucking dragons, said Jorah Mormont. Father, mother. We do this for you and for the North. We will take Tywin Lannister's beloved home and empty it all of Lannister gold. And then we can continue on our campaign of taking revenge on the fucking Southerners until we come face to face with the fucking Wolf Prey. Talisa 9. Are you well, Talisa? Asked her good mother as Talisa entered Eddard's Solar. I am. I came to say that Maester Jellimund has received word from Prydain. He has crushed the Lannister army and wounded Jaime Lannister, she explained. She saw how they both smiled at the two bits of news. It is good news. That bastard should suffer what he put Eddard through. But I only wish that he would return home and be by my side as I give birth to our second child. And how is your progress? Did Maester Jellimund say? Asked Eddard. He did. Another 5 moons, he said, she replied as she sat down with them and gave Ashura the letter from Prydain. I would pay a lot of gold to see the look on Tywin's face when he hears the news of the battle and what's happened to his previous favorite child, said Ashura. As would we all, Ash. But for now, we must focus on marshalling more men from across the north. Prydain will need more reinforcements if he is to fight all of Rhaegar's armies, said Eddard before he turned to Talisa. Have you sent any letters to your father? I have. I have asked for reinforcements and he has agreed, having heard of Joranos stories fighting the Dothraki and Unsullied. And I am sure he will have stories to tell of crushing the Lannisters, said Talisa. So long as Prydain and Joranos keep winning battles and defeating Rhaegar's armies, that will embolden father and invigorate Volantis into further supporting the North's cause. If there is one thing that people back home in Volantis love, it is stories of heroes taking on mighty armies. And now, Joranos will become one such hero, especially when he returns home with his armies, hardened from the war, and will take the fight to the Dothraki and conquer large swathes of land of Vys Dothrak as father has always wanted. Interlude 19, Tom Hiddleston, the head that wears the crown. Adam Marbrand, Tom Hiddleston. How much further until King's Landing? Adam asked Leo. 2 moons, maybe 3. We're being weighed down by all of our wounded, he replied. Perhaps it might be best to leave them with the next castle we come across. Adam turned to the idiot whom spoke, Harys Swyft. They are our men, Sir Harys. Whom fought for Casterly Rock, House Lannister and the Westerlands. Would you have House Lannister be disgraced by leaving such good and loyal men behind? Loron demanded. Adam beamed with approval of his nephew. Good lad, Loron. The fiery Marbrand side of you is just showing itself now, he thought with pride. What news is there on the Northern Army? Asked Forley. They are coming on to the Golden Tooth now, said Tyak Lanek. Adam saw how worried Leo looked when considering his family and his home were at risk if the Northerners did intend to invade by using the Golden Tooth as a launching position. The golden tooth can hold them back, the savages stupidly said Hayes Swyft. Both Adam and Lyle sighed with annoyance at the stupidest of all Westerlords. Sir Hayes, would you really call the Northerners savages? After they crushed our army and their prince killed Gregor Clegane and wounded my nephew? Geryon Lannister demanded. Adam shivered as he remembered Prydain Stark, and how scarily strong and fast he was on the battlefield. He couldn't believe it when he and Lyle spotted Prydain smash Clegane to the ground repeatedly like he was a rag doll and then rip his arm off and beheaded him with that very arm. Though Jaime was still recovering from his wounds and injuries from his brief duel with Prydain Stark, Tidget and Geryon Lannister held the command of what was left of the Westerlands army. Of course. Forgive me, my lord, said Hayes Swyft whilst Adam rolled his eyes at the stupidity of the man whose sigil was literally a chicken. After finishing with the meeting, Adam walked with Loron to Jaime's tent. Will he heal, Uncle Adam? Asked Loron. Of course he will, dear boy. Your father is a strong man and one of the best and bravest I've ever known, Adam replied with a beaming smile as he patted his shoulder. They arrived at Jaime's tent, where he was being treated by some traveling silent sisters and a maester from a nearby village, called Karen. How is he, Maester Karen? Asked Loron. He heals, my lord. The worst of the pain is over, but now he must heal. It will take time, he said. Adam walked toward his boyhood friend, as he lay in bed, his eyes fastened shut, his skin pale and wet with sweat. His breaths were ragged and laboring, as though just breathing was hurting him. Father, said Loron, holding his hand as he sat at his side. It pained Adam to see Jaime in this state, when he was once considered one of the greatest fighters in all of the Seven Kingdoms. I know you will make it through, Father. I know it, Loron said as he held Jaime's hand. Adam noticed Jaime's lips twitch slightly, as though smiling at his son in his unconscious state. Loron's friends Oliver and Reynold joined them. Loron, we're going to have some drinks to celebrate your knighthood. Are you coming? Asked Reynold. Loron turned to Adam, who just smiled and nodded. Go. Be with your friends, Sir Loron, Adam whispered proudly before patting him on the back. Loron hugged Jaime gently before walking to join his friends and Adam watched them both congratulate him for his knighthood. Good that he has something to take his mind off of the battle, Adam commented as he sat at Jaime's side. Father knighted him after the battle. He killed 4 Northerners to save the life of Lord Brax. More deserving of a knighthood than I, for I got my knighthood from just winning Father's name a day, Tony, Adam whispered. Even though Jaime was in no state to reply, Adam looked around and saw Jaime's armor rooted on an armor stand, or what was left of it. Adam's eyes wandered from his helm to Jaime's breastplate, where he had been punched, looked as though he had been hit by a battering ram. Him. That terror of the battlefield. It's no fucking wonder that he killed a dragon and has slaughtered hundreds of men, crushed a Dothraki horde and personally broken unsullied phalanx. We need you, Jaime. Your father needs you and Loron needs you. The Westerlands need us all right now if Prydain Dragonspan does indeed cross into the Westerlands, Adam whispered. I pray that you come back to us soon, for I fear what may become of our homes if he is left unchecked and unchallenged, he finished before standing up and leaving the tent. Nymeria v. As commanded, Your Grace, the armies of the Crown Lands have been reformed for war, alongside my own armies and the armies of my brother, said Princess Daenerys as she stood before the Iron Throne, sat on by fucking Cersei Lannister, whose idiot son stood by her side. Thank you for all your hard work in the name of the King, House Targaryen and the Iron Throne, dear good sister, said Cersei Lannister. Princess Daenerys walked to the side to make way for the last in the line to be received by the Iron Throne. Lord Gerald of House Grafton announced the herald. Gerald Grafton knelt before Cersei after being announced. Rise, Lord Grafton, she said. My queen, I bring 15,000 men ready for battle and service to their king, he said after rising. Only 5 and 10,000, Lord Grafton, asked Tywin Lannister. My apologies, Lord Lannister, but ever since this war with the Northern traitors began, it has caused infighting amongst those in the Vale whom are loyal to the Iron Throne and those whom would betray their king given the chance, he replied. Has there been any actual fighting amongst the Vale Lords? Asked Jon Connington. Not yet, my Lord Hand. But Jon Arryn has recently died, and with him, the last voice of reason and wisdom in the Eyrie, and unfortunately, the last chance of all the strength of the Vale fighting for our king. And, Elbereth and Lysa Arryn and their sons all seem eager to break faith and fealty to House Targaryen. Interesting. Very interesting. The Arryns will make very useful allies for Aegon. The Knights of the Vale are the greatest heavy cavalry force in Westeros. Elbereth Arryn hates the Targaryens for murdering his boyhood friends and Lysa Arryn hates the Targaryens for murdering her sister. Aunt Elia will be very interested to hear this, Nymeria thought as she fought hard to avoid smiling. Your loyalty to the king and to House Targaryen shall not be forgotten, Lord Grafton. And the loyal armies of the Vale are very welcome additions to our own in these troubling times, Cersei said with her poisonously perfect smile. The doors to the throne room opened, and entered a young knight whom looked very much like a Lannister, with his beautiful golden hair, emerald green eyes and handsome features, came running inside. Your Grace, I beg leave to speak, he said, panting. Cousin Tyok. You are most welcome, of course, to the capital. But why have you come so urgently, asked Cersei. That must be Tyok Lannick, son of Tiget Lannister, and future lord of Tarbeck Castle. My queen, I come bearing grave news from Sir Jaime. Our army was defeated at the God's Eye River near the Gold Road by Prydain Stark, he explained as he rose. What? Fuck. Talisa, your husband has enormous balls of steel. Crushing the Lannister army in just a single battle. Gasps and gossiping around the court were silenced by Lord Commander Hightower of the Kingsguard. Order. The court will have order. How is this possible, Sir Tyok? The Westerland's army outnumbered the Northern army, said Jon Connington. We had been led into a trap at a large fort, my Lord Hand. Just as we had arrived, following their tracks, we started to cross the ford using some pontoon bridges they left behind. But as we crossed, we were harassed and attacked by them, pushing us back across the ford, and as we reached the other side, we realized that we were surrounded. And they wasted no time in attacking from all sides, he explained. What of your scouts? How is it that they did not find out that you had been led into a trap, asked Mace Tyrell. Our scouts are too fearful of venturing too far, as of late, Lord Tyrell. Ever since we began to pursue them, our scouting parties, no matter how large, have been discovered slaughtered and eaten. Eaten? Eaten, Sir Tyok, asked a horrified Jon Connington whilst gasps of terror could be heard across the courtroom. By packs of wolves, Lord Hand. And what of Sir Jaime, asked Tywine. Defeated, my lord. Over 30,000 men were killed and another 30,000 were wounded. Many nobles were killed, including Sir Amory Lorque and Sir Gregor Clegane. Sir Jaime was badly wounded by Prydain Stark, after the Stark renegade had personally killed Sir Gregor, he explained. Sir Gregor was killed by Prydain Stark, whom also wounded my son, asked Tywine, whose eyes opened wide at the mere statement. Yes, my lord. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it. He had disarmed Sir Gregor, who then charged at him with his bare hands. But, as strange as it may seem, Prydain Stark was far stronger, and forced him to his knees before grabbing Sir Gregor by his foot, repeatedly smashing him into the ground like a blacksmith hammering an anvil. And then he beheaded him after ripping his arm off, he explained. What the fuck? All the stories I've heard about Gregor Clegane are not good at all. But none can deny that he was an enormous giant of a brute with inhuman strength, nearing 8 feet in height. But the idea that Prydain could rip his arm off and hammer him into the ground. He was nothing like that at all in Winterfell. He was so quietly spoken, so kind, so sweet, so gentle and loving toward Talisa and their daughter. You said that Sir Jaime is wounded, cousin, asked Cersei. Badly wounded and unconscious, my queen. He attacked Prydain Stark after witnessing Sir Gregor's beheading. Prydain blocked his attack and then punched his armor, knocking him down and leaving him bleeding and his ribs broken. After that, the Northerners let us go before they marched. Marched? Where do they march to? Asked Tywine. They march on the Gold Road towards the Golden Tooth, my lord, said Tyok Lannick. By the gods. I thought crushing the Lannister army would be the greatest insult of all to Tywine and the Lannisters. But invading the Westerlands, the Lannisters and the Targaryens must realize by now that they are fucked. And when she saw Tywine's reaction, Nymeria fought hard to suppress a grin. His expression was that of a dark and furious glare. Whatever the Northerners do to the Westerlands, you fucking deserve it after all you have done to House Martell, to my aunt and my cousins and all those people you have had murdered in your way for House Lannister to dominate Westeros. Jon 19. How the fuck did all of this happen? Jon's mind was awash with doubts, fears and worry as he and the small council sat down in the small council chambers. Rhaegar should be here. If that fucking cowardly traitor Stark hadn't wounded Rhaegar, then he would have won this war by now. The North would have been pacified and Winterfell would be a burning rubble and Starks burning with them. Once all were seated, Tywin made his opinion clear. We must gather all available armies to the capital. None make a move on the Northerners until all armies loyal to the throne have arrived in the capital. What of the situation in the Vale, Lord Tywin? Asked Miles. If what Lord Grafton said was true, then the Arryns and their allies amongst the Vale Lords will marshal all of their strength together and join with the Northerners, said Tywin. We could send Lord Grafton back to the Vale with reinforcements to subdue the Arryns and their allies and put down their rebellion and award the Lord Paramountcy of the Vale and Wardenship of the East to the Graftons, said Cersei. Begging your pardon, my queen, but in the time it takes to do that, there's no telling what Prydain Stark and his army can do, said Jon. He's right. And if we send armies to end the rebellion in the Vale, it will cost us coin, resources, fighting men and time, said Tywin before Cersei could contradict Jon's point. And it's not just the Arryns of the Eyrie we need be concerned about, my queen. It's also the Tullys of Riverrun, the Baratheons of Storm's End and worst of all, the Martells of Sunspear, Jon pointed out. What news do your birds have from the Eyrie, Riverrun and Storm's End, Varys? Asked Tywin. The Baratheons and the Arryns do seem to be gathering their armies and calling their banners, my lord. The Tullys seem to be doing the same, and there is something I have discovered from Riverrun, said Varys. And what is that? Asked Richard. Edmure Tully has seemingly made a deal with Prydain Stark. He will not challenge nor try and stop the Northern Army and their foreign allies, on the condition that no fighting is to take place in the Riverlands and no farms, holdings, villages, towns and castles are to be torched or looted, even if the lords of said lands serve the Iron Throne. But, why would Edmure Tully stoop to such base treachery, making deals with treasonous enemies of his king? Asked Mace Tyrell. Because his hatred for House Targaryen is well known, Lord Tyrell. And by making this deal, not only has he proven himself an enemy of the crown, he has allowed those riverlords loyal to the crown to weaken, for their troops to die, and increasing the power he holds across his country. Slowly allowing himself to become the greatest power in the Riverlands, said Tywin. We cannot waste time, resources or men trying to subdue Riverrun and its allies, Lord Tywin. You said it yourself. We must have all our troops stationed in the Crown lands. If we focus our troops in fighting those traitorous subjects of the king in the Riverlands, Stormlands and the Vale before we fight the Northerners, then Prydain alone will benefit, said Jon. What do you mean? Asked Cersei. In the time it takes to send all loyal armies to crush potential rebellions in the Riverlands, Stormlands and the Vale, then what would stop Prydain Stark from marching, unopposed, to King's Landing? And the Northern Army has proven how mobile it is, time and time again, said Jon. Lord Varys. You said that Prydain Stark has foreign allies marching alongside him. Whom are they? Asked Kevan. His name is Joranos Magai, Sir Kevan. He is Prydain Stark's good brother, following his marriage to Talisa Magai of the Tigers of Volantis. He leads an army of 5,000 tiger cloaks alongside the Northerners, Varys explained. What is there to know about the Tiger Cloaks of Volantis, Lord Varys? Asked Miles. They are the Volanten warrior elite, Sir Miles. One of the best fighting forces in the Free Cities. Reckoned by many to be equal in terms of fighting prowess to the Unsullied of Astapa, said Varys. Gods, he now has a foreign army of great warriors of Essos. One's equal to the mighty Unsullied. How many men is that in his army now? Asked Mace Tyrell. Given the battles they have fought, Lord Tyrell, tens of thousands still. Perhaps over 50,000 men, said Varys. What of Dorne? Should we take them into consideration? Asked Richard. The only thing we should be taking into consideration regarding Dorne is for Aegon and Rhaenys to be taking their rightful places in House Targaryen and that Aegon be made Prince of Dragonstone. Dorne's armies will be very welcome additions to the war, said Miles. The last time I spoke with Doran Martell, he had made it abundantly clear that we will never have Dorne's allegiance so long as the insults and slander made against his sister and her children have been, corrected and that the king recognize his faults, acknowledge her children as his own and for Aegon to be named crown prince, said Jon, knowing full well what response would come from the Lannisters. Outrageous. They would dare to make such demands of the Iron Throne based on what? The lies of his whore sister. Cersei demanded the moment Jon had finished speaking. Your Grace, the Dornish armies may indeed be what we need to defeat the Starks, now that Sir Jaime has been defeated and the Westerland's army crushed, said Lord Commander Hightower. The doors to the small council opened and Pycelle entered, panting and shaking as he held up a letter in the direction of his master. My lord. A most urgent message from Casterly Rock, he said. Tywine wordlessly took the letter and he stood up as he read it. Jon felt concerned when he saw how Tywine reacted upon finishing the note. He saw how his eyes darted around, as though rereading it more than once before looking up. It would seem my nephew's news is very much out of date, said Tywine. What do you mean, father? Asked Cersei. The Northerners crossed into the Westerlands, without even taking the Golden Tooth. According to Tyrion and to Alysanne Lefford, they discovered an old goat path that led through the mountains and directly onto the outskirts of the Golden Tooth. And Tyrion writes that they march on Casterly Rock. Chapter 48, Great Den of Lions. Chapter text. Eddard 19. What? What did you say, Maester? Asked Eddard. Your Grace, your son has crossed the mountains of the Golden Tooth and into the Westerlands. And now he marches on Casterly Rock, said Maester Jellimund. Eddard sat up on his bed with Ash at his side, and had been awaiting him to check the healing of his leg when they received his message. The rock is the most impenetrable place in all of Westeros. Not even Aegon the Conqueror had taken it, Eddard thought out loud. Surely he must be marching on Lannisport instead, Ash reasoned before turning to Maester Jellimund. I'm afraid not, my queen. He has made it clear in his letter that he marches to take both Casterly Rock and Lannisport, said Maester Jellimund. Gods, Prydain, what are you thinking? You have won 4 great victories, but trying to take the 2 capitals of the Westerlands is a folly that not even the maddest of Targaryens would have attempted. Hubris was the downfall of Daeron the Young Dragon after all of his victories, all of which led him to being forever young. Is all well? Eddard and Ash looked up to see Arthur standing in the doorway. Not quite, brother. Have you just been with Talisa? Asked Ash. I have, yes. My great-niece is a beautiful and clever little girl, he said with a beaming pride. But what is it that has you both looking so concerned? Asked Arthur. After defeating Jaime Lannister and the entire Westerlands army, he now has crossed into the Westerlands, using a mountain goat path to bypass the Golden Tooth entirely, and is now marching directly for Casterly Rock and Lannisport, said Ashura. What? Maester Jellimund passed the letter to Arthur and he read it at least twice before looking back up at Eddard and his sister. Why is he doing this? Surely he knows of the rock and how no one can take it from besiegement, and that Lan the Clever only managed to take it through wit and not force. Arthur asked. We do not know. Which is why, we shall write to him that he withdraws from this campaign and to return to the north, said Eddard before facing Maester Jellimund. He walked to the bed and started lifting Eddard's leg up slightly to examine it. I leave now for White Harbor and then I shall take a ship to Starfall, said Arthur. Do Aaron and Illyria know you are coming? Asked Ash. Yes, they do, said Arthur. Arthur. Thank you. For everything, said Eddard. Arthur walked toward them as Eddard winced from Maester Jellimund removed the bandaging around his leg. Begging your pardon, my king, he said. No words are necessary, Ned. I hope that the next I see of you all, there is peace in Westeros and your leg will have healed, said Arthur before shaking Eddard's hand and then hugging both him and Ash. Send our brother and sister our regards, said Ash. I will, he said with a smile before taking his leave. Interlude XX, Arya Stark Game of Thrones Season 8 Moby, Arya Stark iPhone HD Phone Wallpaper Pix Fuel. Arya Stark, Maisie Williams. Casterly Rock. I can almost see why the Lannisters think themselves gods. Getting out of bed and looking out from a balcony and they would think that all the world is bowing to them, Arya thought as she looked at the rock from the northern encampment. They had made camp the previous night and it was now that Arya gazed at the magnificence of Casterly Rock. Come, sister. Prydain has summoned us, said Rickon. I said Arya, turning around to see him spinning his axe on the ground. Do you not think that Prydain can take this place? Arya asked. I fear that our victories have gotten to his head. It's one thing to win a victory on the battlefield, but it's another to capture a castle or a city in a siege. But this is Casterly Rock and Lannisport. Not even Aegon the Conqueror, whom had 3 fully grown dragons, took Casterly Rock. Dragons aren't invincible, Rick. Prydain has proven that. All we need do is hear out his plan. If it is mad, then we can just take Lannisport and starve the cunts inside the rock, Arya suggested. And you're alright with that, are you? Starving small folk, elderly, women and children. We'd be no better than the Tyrells, said Rickon. Tywin shouldn't have cast his lot with the fucking Targaryens, and his daughter shouldn't have imprisoned and tortured father, Arya replied angrily as she rested her hand on her short sword. They arrived at Prydain's tent and they stood beside Halric, Artos, Ulrich and Deanna. Prydain stood at the head of the table as he faced a large map with 2 models of their targets on the map. A neatly arranged pile of stones and sand represented Casterly Rock and Lannisport was represented by a pebbled layout and small sand piles representing the walls. Firstly, my lords and ladies, I have good news to announce. My Uncle Aaron has pledged House Dane's assistance in the war, Prydain said. Uncle Aaron is coming to join us. How many men is that, brother? Ulrich asked. 3,000, commanded by Uncle Aaron and our cousin Edric, Prydain replied. It'll be good to see Uncle Aaron and Edric again. Especially with House Dane's army joining us. How far away are they from joining us, my prince? Asked Sir Wendell Marndale. A week, by sea, Sir Wendell. And now, the plan, Prydain said before resting both palms on the table. Arya paid close attention as he pointed at Lannisport and then at Casterly Rock. There are 2 ways we can take both the rock and the city, my lords and ladies. The first is if we wait until House Dane's ships arrive and attack Lannisport by sea, tricking those at the rock into sending men to protect the city. In doing so, they would leave their gates wide open for us to charge inside. I like the sound of that, Arya thought with a malicious grin. It's a good plan, my prince, but is dangerous, and once those gates close, we would never have the chance to get inside ever again, said Jorah Mormont. Why dangerous, Lord Mormont? Asked Jorah Noss. We would have to be close enough for the rock's garrison and reinforcements to not see us before we could storm through the gates and get inside before they realized the deception, the Lord of Bear Island pointed out. But still, it is a good plan. One that is possible, said Hotar Nord. You said that you had another plan, my prince? Asked Roose Bolton. I did, my lord. Last night, I climbed the rock to see if it is possible to climb it, he replied before standing straight and crossing his arms. What? You climbed the rock? My prince? Asked Ricard Karstark. But that's impossible. Artos exclaimed. Is it? Well, brother. Take my spyglass and look up there, Prydain replied before passing his spyglass to Artos and then pointing at a small ledge in the rock, just a few meters above the 200 feet tall main gate, the Lion's Mouth. What the foo? How the fuck did you do that? Artos barely managed to ask. What? Arya snatched the spyglass from Artos' hand and then looked at where Prydain was pointing. 7 hells, Arya thought when she saw it. A small flag of House Stark, placed firmly inside a small gap between some rocks. So, if you could climb it, my prince, what would your plan be? Asked Major Sawin. Myself and some skilled climbers climb the rock, and upon reaching the gatehouse, we would open the gates and allow the army to get through and storm this thrice-damned castle. No alarm would be raised and we would catch the Lannisters napping, said Prydain. And yet, that leaves out how we would take Lannisport, my prince, said Hellman Tallheart. That, I leave in the command of Lord Karstark. I think that the best way would be use a similar tactic. Whilst the rock is under attack, feign a siege assault, and whilst their attention is focused on the main gate, have groups of climbers to climb the walls on the western and eastern flanks. They clear the walls of archers and open the gates for the army. Arya glanced at Ricard Karstark, who beamed at being given the command. Aye, my prince. The city will fall, and by tomorrow night, Tywin fucking Lannister will be shitting his underclothes when he hears of what we've done to his beloved home. Aye, the lords and ladies of the north cheered as they toasted. Prydain 14. This is it. Though I don't do this for glory or to have my name recorded in books, Taking Casterly Rock and Lannisport will ensure that I am never forgotten. Riverbend, White Walls and Lion's Ford were certainly glorious and secured my legacy as a warrior, but doing what not even Aegon the Conqueror achieved, that will be glorious, as well as making an eternal enemy of the Lannisters. Prydain looked up at the rock as he tightened the straps on his chainmail. It wouldn't do for me to climb the rock in my armor. I could do it, but I would wake up the garrison from just my boots bearing down on the steps and my greaves grinding against the rocks. But I'll still keep my helm. Prince Prydain, are you ready? He heard from behind. Prydain turned around to see Tormund Giantsbane, his sons Torreg and Dormund and 9 of Tormund's best climbers. I'm ready, said Prydain. They followed closely behind him as they crept down and began to creep towards the rock. This must be twice as tall as the wall, Torreg commented. Thrice, Tormund whispered brusquely as he looked in awe at the rock. How many times have you climbed the wall, Tormund? Prydain asked. 50, but this is nothing like the wall, he replied as he looked at the lion's mouth. I should say, father. It's too fucking warm here and it stinks of southerners here, muttered Tormund. Where was it that you began your climb, Prince? Asked Tormund. Prydain pointed at where he began the ascent, at a small pile of rocks which he had used to elevate him. Follow close behind me and don't fucking fall, Prydain ordered as he drew 2 climbing picks from his belt. It'll take more than sun-kissed rocks to take down old Giantsbane, boasted Tormund as he slapped his belly with his fist. Prydain was the first to climb and Tormund followed behind him. More than once, he used his werewolf strength to pierce his picks into the rock, pulling himself toward the ledge where he had planted the Stark flag. At his side was Tormund, whom was grinning throughout the whole climb. Upon getting to the ledge, Prydain asked him what amused him so. I don't understand why these Lannisters act as though this place cannot be climbed. This is easier than climbing the wall. Though, my boy was right, it's far too fucking warm and it stinks of southerners here, he whispered before drinking from his water skin. It was then that Torreg and Dormund joined them. Prydain pulled them both up onto the ledge. Still a far way to climb, Dormund said, pointing at the gatehouse, as he drank thirstily from his water skin. It won't be a problem, said Prydain as he drew his spyglass. What can you see? Torreg asked. Prydain looked at the slits which marked out the gatehouse. There were 4 and each was large enough for one of them to squeeze through. 4 firing holes. Each one big enough for us to get through, Prydain replied as he put his spyglass back in his rucksack. And big enough for them to shoot at us or to drop rocks on us, Tormund pointed out. Can you hear that, Tormund? It's the sound of all fucking southern shits here fast asleep and basking in the warmth and sunshine, said Prydain. Even so. All it takes is one misstep and then they would know what we are doing, Dormund said. Then be careful where you step, said Prydain before looking back up at the gatehouse. Only another 300 feet, said Prydain before he resumed the climb. Every time he reached up and pulled himself higher toward the gatehouse, Prydain could hear the heartbeats, snores and sleep-talking of the Lannister soldiers in the gatehouse and scattered all around the rock. And he could smell their sweat, their wine and their food. Soon, I shall be smelling their blood and fear, he thought as he grinned wolfishly at the gatehouse. He reached a cliff-like ledge and as he pulled himself onto it, he looked up at the 4 gatehouse slits, to see they were 10 feet above him. Just 10 more feet, and Casterly Rock is ours, he thought before he looked down to see Tormund, Dormund, Torreg and their men close behind and gaining. How much further? Torreg asked as he looked up at Prydain. See for yourself, Prydain replied before pointing at the gatehouse. Ha! My cock is hardening right now. Tormund grinned before Prydain pulled him up onto the cliff. Once all his men were with him, they resumed the climb and Prydain and Dormund were the first to climb through. Inside, Prydain saw 4 archers, laying fast asleep on the floor. A few of them had empty bottles of wine at their side and one was snoring loudly. Dormund was trying hard to not giggle at another, who had his hand wrapped around his cock and had a big smile on his face. Don't fucking laugh. Signal the army, Prydain whispered. Dormund picked a lit torch from a sconce and just as the others had climbed through the gaps, he threw the torch down. Both sons of Tormund Giantsbane pulled hard on the windlass and Prydain's mouth opened wide into a grin as he heard the gates open. Prydain then turned to the 4 men, whom were just starting to wake up. They were quickly killed by Tormund's men as Prydain turned to see the army charging at the opened gates and the siege beginning on Lannisport. It's worked. We've done it. Tywin Lannister, I would pay all the gold you've got stored here to see your reaction to this news. Interlude XXI, Best of Jessica Chastain on X, Blackbit, 2006, https://t.co/d3glgsmog/x. Melita Marbrand, Jessica Chastain. Mother, when will the Northerners finally leave? Asked High Polar. When they have realized that they can't take the rock, my sweet Melita replied with a beaming smile at her daughter. Though she was certain that they were safe, she still feared for her father, her brother, her husband and her son, all of whom had fought the Northerners at Lion's Ford. She had been reassured by Adam's letter which she received 2 days after the Northerners had sneaked past the Golden Tooth. She was relieved that both he, father and Loron were all right, but she was fearful for Jaime after reading the details of his wounding at the hands of Prydain Stark. The same man whom wounded Jaime is now besieging us. But at least father, Adam, Loron and Jaime are all safe. Melita left her daughter's chambers and walked to the solar of her good father, where she knew Tyrion would be. Melita. Are you well? He asked. I couldn't sleep, she admitted as she noticed him reading a letter. How is Polly? Finding it easier to sleep than I. For that, I envy her, she replied. As do I, sieges are so boring and dull, he said with a grin before looking back down at the letter. Anything I should be concerned about? Melita asked. Oh, no. Just father confirming he received news of Prydain Stark's presence and to write to all our bannermen at home to gather their reserves, he explained. That can't be many, said Melita. It won't be. At a guess, I would say 10,000. 15,000 if one includes the reserves of Casterly Rock and Lannisport. And once gathered, they would be stationed at Golden Tooth, to block off their escape, once they've realized that they cannot take the rock. But the Goat Path? Melita wondered. All sealed, thanks to Alysanne Leford's efforts, Tyrion replied with a smile. Good. With thousands more men at the Golden Tooth and the Goat Path sealed, they will have no way of escaping the Westerlands, leaving the Royalist armies plenty of time to gather and enter the Westerlands and crush the Northern army once and for all, Melita realized as she sat down opposite Tyrion. Just then, a horn was sounded, heard all over the rock. What in the seven hells? It can't be. The Northerner aren't that stupid, Tyrion exclaimed. Melita's first instinct was to run back to High Polar's chambers. Upon getting there, she saw her daughter was wide awake and climbing out of bed in a panic. Mother, what's going on? The Northerners are attacking the gate. Come with me, she said. Even if they cannot break through the lion's mouth, I will never ever let my children out of my sight, Melita thought as she held High Polar's hand tightly and ran with her to Tywin's Solar, where they were joined by Jenna Lannister, Ymon Frey, their youngest sons and High Polar's friends Jane, Joy and Alyssa Prester. As they ran inside, Tyrion turned to Ymon, a cowering weasel dressed in armor. Where is Lenal? Tyrion demanded. Sir Lenal Frey, Castellan of Casterly Rock. Gods, how can anyone feel safe when a Frey is in command of our safety? He is commanding the garrison and will destroy the northern savages, Ymon replied nervously. Suddenly, there was a loud banging on the doors. Open. Quickly. Open the door. Lenal. What in the seven hells is he doing? Alyssa Prester opened the door for Lenal, 4 knights of Casterly Rock and 10 red cloaks. What's going on? And why are you not at your post? The rock is under attack and you're screaming and whinging like a newborn babe. Tyrion demanded. The gates are open. They are inside the rock and Lannisport, he muttered through frightened tears. What? But that's impossible. No one can take the rock. As if to remove any doubt, Melita blanched when she heard a frightening war cry from outside. Come out, Lannister cowards. Come out. Melita felt a shiver down her spine as screams of servants and guards could be heard from everywhere around the rock, as well as the slashing and clashing of steel against flesh and swords clashing against swords. By the gods, how could this have happened? Seal the doors. That door is made of orichalcum. Nothing can break through it. Tyrion told the knights. The knights were quick to follow their orders and they quietly drew their swords and were followed by the red cloaks. Melita looked at the knight whom looked the most senior and experienced out of them. "Whom are you, sir?" she asked. He turned to her and bowed his head and said, "I am Sir Horatio Rowland, my lady." "Sir Horatio, there is a ship in the dock. If you can get us all down there, I will ensure you are fully rewarded." "My lady, whether I live or die, I vow that you shall all be safe," he said with a firm voice. Now, this is a knight whom would make one feel safe. "This ship. How can we get down there?" Lionel asked quickly and fearfully, as though hoping to be first down there. "A trapdoor here. There is a ladder which leads down to the dock," said Tyrion before he moved the desk and moved the carpet. Melita saw the trapdoor. Tyrion opened it and Sir Horatio was the first to speak. "My lord, take 2 of my men to ensure the way is safe. I will keep a few men here and search the rock for as many people as I can and bring them here and to safety." "What are you talking about? We need to get out of here as quickly as we can. The damned servants aren't worth a copper," Aemon muttered. "They serve House Lannister, many have served it for longer than you've been alive, Aemon." "Shut your stupid mouth, now," Tyrion snapped. In spite of being Tyrion's uncle, Tyrion's outburst kept him silent. 2 of Sir Horatio's knights helped High Polar and her friends down first. Before Sir Horatio could open the door, a frightful and growling voice could be heard from outside. "I know you're in there." Melita felt a despairing cold that chilled her from her head to her feet, just hearing that voice. Sir Horatio began to quickly usher more down the ladder whilst he stood ready with his great sword. "My lady, you must go," he insisted. "No, I will be Lady of Casterly Rock one day. I am not going to cower before the Northerners," she replied. But nothing could have prepared her for what came next. The door, an unbreakable orichalcum door according to Tyrion, fell from its hinges, with a foot-shaped hole in the bottom. "I am a Marbrand of Ashmark and am wed to a Lannister of Casterly Rock. No mere brute will frighten me into submission," Melita thought as her arms fell to her side, her hands curled into fists and staring at the armored man standing above the crushed door. This armored man entered the Solar, dressed in blood-stained chainmail and boiled leathers. But, perhaps the most frightening part of him was that he was wearing a helm in the shape of a snarling wolf's head. In one hand, he held a great sword of which shone beautifully in the morning sunlight more so than any other steel sword. Through 2 holes where his eyes were, Melita spotted 2 beautiful violet eyes. "Prydain Stark. I would advise against going into your little dock. I have men down there already," he growled from underneath his helm. Sir Horatio raised his great sword. "Don't, sir. Don't. I have no intention to allow any rape or murder today," he growled. Sir Horatio turned to Melita. Melita nodded, and he slowly sheathed his great sword, but kept one hand on the handle of his dagger. "What do you intend to do us, Lord Prydain?" Melita demanded of the northern renegade. As Melita spoke, from the corner of her eye, she saw the phrase, "Lannisters, High Polar, Tyrion and High Polar's friends climb back up," all whilst Sir Horatio and his men formed a tight circle around them. The free men did no such thing and were embarrassingly cowering whilst High Polar was holding the hands of her friends and showed no sign of fear on her face, for which Melita felt proud of High Polar. "Lord Prydain. I know of no such man," he replied with a shrug. "Prince Prydain. Apologies. Casterly Rock is of course yours," Aemon said as he fell to both knees. Even though she couldn't see his face as he turned to Aemon Free, she could hear how he growled with disgust. "Shut up, free weasel," he snapped. This time, he passed his great sword to one of his men behind him whilst he removed his foreboding and frightening helm. What struck Melita about him was that he seemed so handsome and his face seemed innocent, in spite of all the stories about him. "Lady Lannister, do I have Casterly Rock's surrender?" he said, turning his hauntingly beautiful violet eyes to her. "What becomes of us? If you do, then no one shall be harmed, whether highborn or lowborn. Enough have died this day already, and I have no wish to spill the blood of the innocent or the defenseless," he replied. "I will ask again. Do I have your surrender?" This time his voice sounded impatient and on the verge of an unrelenting fury. She looked down at the orichalcum door at where he had knocked it down, with just one kick. "Oh, the door. I am sorry for kicking it down. But, I didn't want to waste time by trying to organize a surrender when you were trying to escape," he said, noticing at where she was looking. Tyrion looked fearfully at Melita. If he could kick that door down, if he could behead Sir Gregor Clegane, if he could knock Jaime down with just one blow to his chest, if he could behead a dragon, what in the seven hells is he? You have Casterly Rock's surrender, my lord, she said with a nod. Good, he said with a friendly smile. Lord Prydain. Will we be released or are we prisoners? Bravely asked High Polar. The Stark enigma turned to her. You are prisoners, my lady, until we decide to leave, he replied. You will release us and leave immediately. We are Lannisters, of the most powerful house in the world. You are just northern savage pups, said Lenal, whom had drawn his sword and pointed it at the northern renegade, as though trying to regain what little dignity and respect he had lost. Put that away now, Lenal. You will get us all killed. Pups? Asked the frightening Stark before he laughed. His laugh was cruel and scary whilst two of his men reached for their swords. Until their lord held his hand up to stop them. He reached for Lenal's sword, grabbing it by the tip with one hand. Pretty sword, he commented before he twisted it slightly. Melita's eyes opened wide when she saw Lenal's sword bend, the sword from where the fuller stopped to the tip bent completely as though a blacksmith had forged it that way. Lenal stared in shock at what became of his sword. Sit down, he commanded. Lenal hadn't acknowledged the order. I said sit down, free cunt. Or I'll rip your arm off and behead you with it like I did to Gregor Clegane. Nothing had scared Melita more than the furious sound of his shout as he faced down Lenal. And for a moment as he shouted, she thought she saw his beautiful violet eyes turn a nightmarish shade of red. Lenal quickly ran to a chair and sat down, shivering and crying as he sat down. High Polar and her friends hugged each other, but High Polar urged them to keep quiet. Melita's first instinct was to run to High Polar and shield her from this fearful northern brute, but she remained where she was and stood her ground. The northern brute growled quietly before his anger subsided, and as he calmed down, Melita saw his eyes were indeed violet and not red as she thought. As I said, you are my prisoners, but none of you shall be harmed, in spite of what Cersei and Jaime have done to my parents. He spoke the last part slowly, to emphasize how much he held them in contempt for the actions of Melita's good sister and her husband. He announced this to the room before turning to Melita and to Tyrion. Come with me to the rookery. You will write to Tywin and tell him that I have Casterly Rock and Lannisport and that you are not being harmed. Chapter 49, Marching on the South. Chapter text. Jon XX. How is Rhaegar's recovery, Jon? Asked Miles. He is healing well and is no longer grunting in pain every time he breathes or eats. It won't be long before he is able to rejoin us here and fulfill his duties as King, Jon replied proudly of his beloved Rhaegar as he sat with Miles and Richard in the small council. Good. That is good. We need his counsel now more than ever, said Richard. Indeed we do. The sooner he returns in better health, the better. Then Cersei's power is gone, Daenerys and I can ensure that Jaehaerys is removed from his position as Crown Prince and Aegon and Rhaenys will return to King's Landing. But, I shouldn't involve Richard or Miles yet. Not when nothing is certain, and the war with the Northerners is ongoing. Tywin, Cersei, Varys, Kevan, Adrian, Mace and Sigurd arrived for the small council. You are here early, Lord Hand Mace commented. Ah, Lord Tyrell, just enjoying some moments of peace and quiet before focusing on work, Jon replied honestly. If we might focus on that very subject, Tywin interrupted. What news is there on the whereabouts on Eddard Stark? Miles asked Varys. My birds have confirmed that he is safely in Winterfell, Sir Miles, he replied. Fuck. How did he get there? And who in the Seven Hells helped him escape in the first place? Do we have any idea as to whom helped him escape? Tywin asked. At the same time of his escape, Lord Tywin, I discovered that the High Septon was traveling around the city to preach to different peoples. One of his stops was at the harbor. And moments after stopping at the harbor, a Dornish ship set sail for Runestone. Runestone? Of course. Bronze Yohn Royce is an old friend of Eddard Stark from his time as a ward of Jon Arryn. And his hatred for House Targaryen is well known, for he blames Rhaegar for the execution of his brother. Speaking of the Vale, what news is there regarding the rebellious attitudes of the Arryns and their supporters? Asked Cersei. Your Grace, Elbereth Arryn, Yohn Royce, Horton Redfort, Anya Waynwood and others have called their banners and gathered their forces at their castles, waiting to assemble at the Eyrie, replied Varys. What of the Riverlands and the Stormlands, Lord Varys? Asked Mace Tyrell. Edmure Tully and his supporters have assembled their armies, but have made no significant moves, Lord Tyrell. He had reportedly sent ravens to those riverlords loyal to the Iron Throne. One of my birds discovered the contents of said letters. Saying nothing more than I have not forgotten nor forgiven your words about my father and sister these past several years. A clear threat to those of his family's bannermen whom have slandered his family. Family. Duty. Honor. Both he and his uncle will take revenge on them for said antagonism. And, I fear we will be unable to help them, should the need arise, not when our efforts are focused on fighting the Northerners. As for the Stormlands, Robert Baratheon has made it no secret of his anger towards the loyal Stormlords. He, his brother Stannis and their sons Gendry, Edric and Fortis lead an army of 15,000 and have already captured the castles of the Stormlords loyal to the Iron Throne, said Varys. What? What of Griffin's Roost? What of my home, Lord Varys? Asked Jon. That was the last to be captured, my Lord Hand. Though the loyal Stormlords were fortunately not home. They were commanding their armies and marching them toward King's Landing to join the royal armies. Fucking Robert Baratheon. I'll gut the fucking drunk brute. I'll tear out his organs. I'll gift a minstrel with a lute stringed with his organs. That fucking traitor. Jon snapped as he stood up. That does it. We must end these rebellions before they can join into one massive army. Lord Hand, keep calm. Miles tried to say. Easy for you to say. It isn't Maidenpool that has been defiled and conquered by bastards and traitors. Lord Hand, Robert Baratheon is trying to provoke you and us into rash action. Don't let him, said Tywine strongly, all whilst his daughter was grinning as though she enjoyed watching Jon emotionally furious. Jon grunted loudly and took a few deep breaths, just as the door opened. Oh, what the fuck is this now? It was Pycelle. My lords. My queen. My Lord Hand. I bring the gravest of news, he said, his eyes bewildered and in fear. What is it, Grand Maester? Cersei asked calmly, still amused by Jon's fury. Casterly Rock and Lannisport have fallen to Prydain Stark, he said. What? Casterly Rock and Lannisport? Jon couldn't believe what he had just heard. That's impossible, Tywine said immediately. Pycelle handed him 2 letters. Tywine read both letters with a determined and focused eye, as though rereading them desperately so that Pycelle was either wrong or had misread it. Father? Cersei asked with worry. It was the first time that Jon had ever seen her look so awash with fear. And it was the first time that Jon had seen Tywine Lannister, a man so skilled at hiding his emotions, look as if he was in a fearful panic. But moments later, that panic on his face vanished, replaced by a fearsome rage. One was sent by Tyrion and the other by Melita. Both Casterly Rock and Lannisport have been captured. By the Starks, he said, his anger could be clearly heard as he paused between each word. It was as if Tywine was shaking with fury that such a thing had come to pass. What of Lord Tyrion and Lady Melita, my lord? Did they escape? Asked Mace Tyrell. No. They are Prydain Stark's prisoners, said Tywine. By the gods. Casterly Rock itself. Not even Aegon the Conqueror could conquer it, even with 3 dragons. And yet this northern boy, whom has never fought a war before, has taken it. The Lord of Casterly Rock stood up and threw the letters at the other side of the room. Jon could hear him breathe heavily through his nose as though determined to not let the small council see him lose his temper at the news of his beloved home being captured by their enemy. How could this have happened? Were they betrayed? Cersei asked as Richard picked up the letters. No, my queen. Lord Tyrion writes that Prydain Stark boasted to him that he and 12 men climbed the rock from the bottom to the gatehouse. And he even planted numerous Stark flags at every ledge he had stopped at on the way, just to prove that point. But he also writes that Sir Davin Lannister managed to escape with the Lannisport fleet to Fair Isle to prevent the fleet's capture, Richard announced. Who the fuck is this boy? No. He's not a boy. He murdered Prince Viserys. He slew Aerys Aulas. He led the northern armies to victory 4 times, against Viserys, the Golden Company, the Dothraki, the Unsullied and the Westerland's army. And now, he has conquered Casterly Rock by climbing it. A structure taller than the wall. He's a warrior unlike we've ever seen. We must gather all armies and march on Casterly Rock. And end the Northerners once and for all. This insult against House Lannister cannot be allowed to stand. As long as Prydain Stark lives, he insults both House Targaryen and House Lannister. Cersei spat with hatred like a serpent spits poison. If we march all royal armies on the Westerlands, your grace, King's Landing would be undefended from the rebellious armies of the Riverlands, the Stormlands and the Vale. Who knows, they may even offer the bastard Aegon to take the capital in his name, said Kevan, whom looked barely able to contain his anger at the news of the capture of his home. But we cannot allow this northern savage to defile the rock, she all but screeched at her uncle. We will not. So far we have allowed him to make the first move, and every move he makes, it turns out to be an ingenious one. Well, now, it is our turn to make our move. And this time, we will not underestimate him, said Tywin. What do you suggest should be done, Lord Lannister? Asked Miles. We will dispatch the navies of the Iron Throne, Gulltown, Dragonstone, Oldtown, the Arbor and Lannisport and sail them to blockade Lannisport. Once the fleets blockade Lannisport, we shall send half of them to sail an army to the north. In the last war, we failed to make a beachhead on the north. We will not fail this time. We will land an army behind Moat Cailin. Once we do, the north will be at our mercy. All while Stark wastes time trying to escape from the Westerlands to save his home. Interlude XXII, The Last King, Der Erbe des Königs, Film Critic Trailer Filmdienst. Toreg Giantspan, Jacob Oftebro. Fuck, brother. This southern wine has got me weak at the knees. Dormund said as he threw down his empty wine cup. That's because this southern wine is horse piss. Toreg laughed before clapping Dormund's back and stuffing a handful of pork in his mouth. Nah, it's because you're fucking weak. Joramun laughed before he belched. Gods, these southerners may not know how to fight or how to watch their backs for a trap, but, fuck, they have got some fucking delicious food and really good wine. A pity we don't get good food or wine like this beyond the wall. Joramun said as his wine cup was filled by a serving girl whom smiled at Dormund. It's only when he hasn't been drunk and getting into fights that the girls like Dormund. Probably because his face isn't black and red with blood and bruises from my fists. No, it is a fucking shame. But, I wouldn't trade my home for a castle here in the south. Because beyond the wall and up north, that is where boys became hard men and warriors. Whereas the south softens men to become prissy little shits. It's no fucking wonder that no matter how many armies we fight, we always fucking batter them bloody and piss on their corpses. Toreg said before drinking a third cup of wine. Now, why is this girl giving you the eye, Dormund? Why does she think your pretty face is prettier than mine? Saigon asked as he joined them, with wine spilled down his furs and bits of chicken hanging from his mouth. Because I've got a beautiful face, Thun. And don't you fucking forget it. Dormund replied whilst pointing tauntingly at Saigon. We'll see about that, won't we? Saigon said as he threw away his wine cup and started to flex his arms. My lords and ladies. Toreg turned around to see Prydain standing and raising his hands. Best leave the fighting for later, brother, Toreg said, grabbing Dormund by his shoulder. Saigon reluctantly sighed with annoyance and walked to join his father. Where will we go next? Oldtown. The Arbor. Highgarden. King's Landing. I want to kill some fucking southerners and feast on their fine and fancy foods and empty all of their barrels of good wine. They had been staying at Casterly Rock and Lannisport for a week now, and they had since been joined by Prydain's Dornish uncle Aron and his son Edric. They had brought with them an army of 3,000 men, and the news that Dorne's armies were mustering, but whilst it was clear that they wouldn't fight for Rhaegar, not even the Lord of Starfall knew of Doran Martell's intentions. Before he spoke, his household guards removed the Lannisters, Freys and Westerland nobles from the hall, along with all household servants. For a week now, we've all been enjoying the Lannister hospitality, said Prydain, at which garnered many a laugh and cheer in the feasting hall of Casterly Rock. But now we must turn our attention back to the war. For in the Riverlands, Stormlands and the Vale, our allies are gathering their armies and preparing for the day that they can join with us and march on King's Landing. But, The enemy armies are still too strong. Which is why, we shall weaken them more, said Prydain. What is our next move then, my prince? Asked Roose Bolton. We shall leave Casterly Rock tomorrow morning. We will march and leave the Lannister capitals and march for the Ocean Road, said Prydain. The Ocean Road. I fucking know nothing about maps. All I want to know about is fucking, feasting, drinking and fighting. Though I will be Lord of Mead's Meadow, I don't fucking want it. I just want to spend my life fighting and feasting, like a true warrior should. Would it not be more sensible to take the river road to reach into the Riverlands, my prince? Asked Galbart Glover. No, Lord Glover, because that takes us into the Riverlands, where there are no enemies to speak of, especially with the agreement with Lord Tully in mind. No, we march for the Ocean Road, because that will take us into the Reach, he said, finishing with a gleaming and victorious grin. The Reach. Now, that's more like it. Even more southerners to slaughter and the chance to fill my belly with even more of their fancy foods and wines. You intend to invade the Reach, my prince? Asked Jorah Mormont. Aye, Lord Mormont. And head straight for Highgarden. Once the Tyrells and Flowers realize our intention, they will march their entire army to stop us. And that is how we shall crush them, and then we take their beloved Highgarden, said Prydain before drinking from his wine cup. Whilst many looked at him in shock, a few, including the great Jon, Roose Bolton, Rickard Karstark, Willam Dustin and Aron Dane, looked at him with admiring pride. Toreg was the first to raise his wine cup. Aye. All turned to him. The prince's plans have led us to many a victory. Especially here. These soft and poncy southerners know nothing of war, the Flowers of the Reach especially so. They won't stand a fucking chance against us. The Tyrell twats made their choice when they decided to betroth their rose to the Viperous Prince Jay. We shall fucking show them what it means to fuck with the North. Toreg announced. And at that, all voiced agreement to the plan. Loras 6. Loras decided that he wanted to see more of his future good brother, for he still didn't trust him around her sister. He had gone to the archery range, where he had been told that the Crown Prince was after he had enquired about it to various servants. He saw the Crown Prince using a Mirish crossbow on various targets. The targets had different names on each one. Prydain Stark, Eddard Stark, Edmure Tully, Robert Baratheon, Elbereth Arryn, Egon Waters, Rhaenys Waters and Elia Martell. When I was his age, I was spending too much time training with both a lance and a sword, and yet he prefers using a crossbow. Why? He is to be king one day, why use a crossbow? My prince, he. Just as Jaehaerys had been aiming at Prydain Stark. His shot missed and struck the grass behind it. You fucking cunt. You ruined my shot. Meryn. Take him, the spoiled prince screamed. What? Loras didn't like where this was going. When the cruel and ugly-faced knight of the Kingsguard grabbed the poor servant, Jaehaerys grinned evilly. Tie him to the target board with Prydain Stark's name on it, he said gleefully. I must put a stop this. My prince, good day, Loras said, drawing his attention to Loras. Sir Loras, Jaehaerys replied, without even glancing at him. I apologize for interrupting, but I was sure that this servant had a message to bring, Loras said, noticing the scrolled parchment in the servant's pouch. Jaehaerys and Sir Meryn turned to the servant, whom was nodding profusely at Loras' words. Meryn snatched the parchment from the pouch and unfurled it. Her Grace the Queen summons you to her chambers, my prince, he said. Jaehaerys grumbled like a spoiled child not getting what it wanted. Let him go, he ordered before unloading his crossbow. The servant panted with relief at being released before Jaehaerys lazily turned to him. Take my crossbow and put it in the armory. Damage it, and I'll make you my target once more, and then I will finish the job, he commanded. Of course, my prince. Thank you ever so much for your kindness, my prince, he said before gently and carefully holding the crossbow. How can this little shit marry Margaery? Father has been in the capital for nearly 3 years now, and how has he not found out this despicable behavior from this vicious and violent little cunt? Why hasn't the king done anything to stomp out this atrocious behavior? Has he been spending too much time plotting against the Starks or obsessing over ancient and long-dead prophecies? Loras left as quickly as he could to find grandmother. Loras found her drinking tea in the gardens and talking with Margaery and Princess Maegil. She at least shares no similarities to her brother. She seems too gentle and too timid to be the sort that take pleasure in mindless violence. It is so good of you to join us here, my dear. Being surrounded by men, who may as well be fools, becomes very tiring, grandmother said. Her free tongue made the young and innocent princess giggle before grandmother noticed Laura's. Grandmother, I apologize for this interruption. I was hoping if I could speak in private, said Laura's. Of course, dear boy. Left. One of her bodyguards, presumably Left, helped her stand up and she used her cane to walk with Laura's. What is it that interrupts my time with your sister and her newest friend? A matter that concerns the older brother of said friend, Laura's replied. Grandmother paused and faced Laura's as she stopped walking. Go on, she said, her face seemingly worried for where this might be heading. Not 10 minutes ago, I was at the archery range, to find the Crown Prince, and I was hoping for the chance to get to know him a little better. Only when I was there, I saw him using a crossbow, and when a servant came, bearing a letter from the Queen, Harry's missed his target, blamed the servant and ordered a King's Guard to grab him and tie him to the target board. It was only on my intervention that this stopped and that the servant's life was spared, he explained. Grandmother hummed as she thought about what Laura's just said. Was there anyone else there, she asked. None. Just myself, the servant, Harry's, and Sumerian of the King's Guard. Does father know of this? No. If he did, he would never have allowed for this betrothal to take place, said grandmother instantly. So, what will be done? Laura's asked worriedly. Fear not, Laura's. I will make sure to have the matter in hand. I will keep an eye on both Margaery and her betrothed. If there is even a cruel word spoken out of turn at her, I will get to the bottom of it. Margaery will not be allowed to suffer at this spoiled brat's hands, grandmother assured Laura's. Chapter 50, Gathering Intelligence. Chapter text. Elia X. A toast, friends and family. To the fall of Casterly Rock. Doran said as he raised his cup. Something I would make an additional 20 toasts to. Oberyn added with a grin as he drank from his cup. As would I, brothers. As would I. The mood in the old palace was elated when news had come of the capture of Casterly Rock and Lannisport. Aunt, you've met Prydain Stark. What is he like? Asked Arianne, whom looked hungry as she asked the question, and it was not hunger for food. Arry, my dear, I have not seen Prydain since he was Tristan's age, Elia replied as she ate some spiced chicken. And he's far too honorable to ever stray from his wife's bed and into yours. But all of these stories they say about him. Is it true that he is a warrior far more skilled than any other? Arry asked with interest. The most I saw of him was defeating his brothers and Aegon on the practicing yard, and when he escorted me to dances and feasts in Winterfell, Elia explained. He was such a kind and caring boy back then. But what Rhaegar tried to do at Harrenhal has undoubtedly changed him. I still cannot believe that he killed Viserys, his dragon, and accomplished so much in less than a year. But from what Nymeria said of him, he must wish to return home to Winterfell, his wife and daughter. What news is there from your daughters in King's Landing, brother? Elia asked. Nymeria told me that all seems well, and that Varys doesn't appear to be on their tail, he explained. Would he make it clear that he knew whom they are? Elia wondered. I wouldn't say that we are friends, but the spider and I have an understanding. And he knows better than to anger a red viper. And there is no better way to do such a thing than to report my daughters to Cersei Lannister, Oberyn explained. Especially now, brother. Cersei Lannister, by all accounts, is a creature whom has grown up with the belief that Lannisters are superior to all others, including the Targaryens. The capture of her girlhood home will have made her furious to the extent that she would claw at a serving girl for merely being a minute late with her food, Doran commented. Indeed. Prydain's exploits will have infuriated both her and her father. Will that change anything for Dorne or for our plans, father? Arianne asked. No, Arry. However, Arryn may have forced my hand, replied Doran. What do you mean, brother? Asked Oberyn. Arryn and Edric Dayne have led the army of Starfall to join Prydain Stark, explained Melorio. I'm surprised that it has taken him this long to respond to the war. And how does that affect us, brother? Asked Elia. King's Landing will find out soon, and will demand to know why I have let one of my most powerful bannermen to do this without my orders, said Doran. What will you say when they find out, uncle? Asked Egon. I will say that they acted out of my orders. And if they order that we join Dorne's armies with theirs, that will be out of the fucking question, said Doran. Yes, they had their chance. Had Rhaegar recognized his faults and Egon and Rhaenys as his children, thousands and thousands of people would still be alive. Including his own brother. Rhaegar, you brought this on yourself. I just hope that I can see you one last time before you die. And ask you if any of this was worth it. Arthur X. The more stories I hear about my nephew, the more I am convinced that the world is turning mad, Arthur thought as he rode to the entrance of Starfall. My lord, welcome home, said Sir Ezekiel. My thanks, Sir Ezekiel. Is my brother ready to receive me? Arthur asked as he climbed down from his horse. I am afraid not, my lord. Lord Dane and young Edric left 2 weeks ago, he replied. It was then that Arthur noticed something different. There were less guards at the gate and at their posts on the battlements. Fewer men working at the stables, smithy and in the fields. Has my brother and nephew left with the army of House Dane? Asked Arthur. They have indeed, my lord. Your lady sister received news from a raven 5 days ago that they made safe landfall at Lannisport and have since joined the army of Prince Prydain, he explained. And what an army it is, and what things my nephew has achieved. Arthur entered the Palestone Sword, where he had been told Illyria was in their brother's solar. Upon entering the solar, he saw his sister at Aaron's desk, finishing reading a letter and writing another before looking up at him. Sister, Arthur said. Brother. I am glad to see you are well. Forgive me for not giving you a proper welcome, but I have been receiving many ravens. From Sunspear, Winterfell and even King's Landing. King's Landing. Do they know that House Dane supports Prydain and his army? Arthur asked with worry. No. They do not. At least, Cersei Lannister hasn't said as much in her most recent letter. She just demands that our army comes to King's Landing to join with the royal armies, and that if we do not, we shall be branded traitors and recognized as an enemy to the realm, she explained. Gods, losing Casterly Rock cannot have been good for her precious ego. I know how fragile a Lannister's ego can be. We all heard about what you did to rescue our good brother. Well done, Illyria said with a smile as Arthur sat down. Yes. For the first time in a long time, I did something chivalric, and for once, it reminded me of what it meant to me when I was once a knight, Arthur replied. And how is Ash? She asked. Happy. In spite of most of her children being at war. For a while, I feared that she would never be happy again until Ned and she were reunited, he admitted. I pray the day will come that the war will end and her children will return to her and our own family can return to Starfall, said Illyria. As do I, said Arthur. Ah. Has Illyria softened you once more, Artie? Illyria asked teasingly. She chuckled whilst Arthur blushed at the mention of her name. Will you go to Sunspear to see her? I don't think Rhaegar will care anymore. As far as he is concerned, our nephew is the biggest threat to his reign, and neither you nor Elia, she said. It is not him I am concerned about, sister. It's the Lannisters. They will want me dead the moment it is discovered that I am back in Starfall, said Arthur. We had already received a letter from King's Landing, brother, on that matter. Cersei demanded that Aaron hand you over for daring to commit treason and draw swords against the king and the king's men. The more I hear of Cersei Lannister, the more I am convinced that she is Aerys reborn in a beautiful woman's body. Arthur paused when he looked up on the mantelpiece to see Dawn. Dawn. What is it doing here? He asked. Our vicious idiot cousin Drold tried to steal it. As well as being banished from High Hermitage, he had the misfortune to run into a gang of bandits, whom filled him full of arrows, said Illyria. Good riddance. In spite of being family, he was never a true Dane, and didn't deserve to call himself a knight. What in seven hells was he thinking that Dawn would accept him, Arthur thought. Arthur walked up to the sword. It's been a whole year since I last tried to wield it. Dawn, do you consider me worthy to take you to battle once more? The children of my brother and my sister go to war against those whom have insulted House Dane. I would join them, to protect them and to avenge all insults against our house. But I cannot do that alone. I must do it with you. He reached out and touched the handle. He held his breath as his fingers came ever so close to touching the handle. He felt nothing as he touched the handle. What? He gripped the handle. He felt no pain. I am worthy. Once more I am worthy, he thought as he felt his moisten that he was allowed to wield Dawn once again. He held up Dawn with both hands. Artie. Arthur turned to face Illyria, holding Dawn with both hands. Tomorrow, I go to join our brother and our nephews, he said. Nymeria 6. Nymeria was laughing and drinking with her sisters when they heard the news of Prydane's capture of the two places Lannisters love most. A pity we couldn't have been there for when Tywine and Cersei heard the news, Tyen giggled. I'll drink to that, Oberyn boomed with a laugh and a burp. Nymeria turned to Sorrela, who stopped laughing, as though she just realized something. What worries you, sister? Nymeria asked. What will Prydane do now? If he stays in the Westerlands, will Cersei send armies to the north, now unprotected, she asked. No. At least, I don't think so, replied Nymeria. How can you be so sure? Asked Oberyn. Sister, this is why you leave the thinking to me. Fighting is your area of expertise. This is mine. As well as pissing off the Lannisters and undoubtedly pinching all of their gold, capturing both Casterly Rock and Lannisport is a message. Support House Targaryen, and I'll come for your home. That is what Prydane is doing. He could have conquered all of the Westerlands, but he didn't. He went straight for the jewel of the Westerlands, the Rock and Lannisport, Nymeria explained. How do you know all of this? Tyen asked. Because it's how I would do it, replied Nymeria. But if what you're saying is right, what does that mean for Prydane now? Will he march for the Crown Lands? Asked Sorrela. That, I do not know for certain. I have 3 ideas as to what he will do, but I don't know which he will choose, Nymeria replied with an angry shrug. She hated not knowing anything for certain. What are they? Asked Oberyn. First, he will use the Northern Fleet to sail home and wait for the Targaryen and Lannister armies to come for them at Moat Cailin. But, I don't think he would do that when they still have 2 dragons, she replied. Second, he marches for King's Landing. But I don't think he will do that. As well as dragons, they still have many armies, perhaps less than 200,000. And unlike they would be able to at Moat Cailin, it will be near impossible to play clever tricks and tactics against an army that outnumbers you 4 to 1 on an open field of battle. And the allies of the north from the Riverlands, Stormlands and Vale have no way of reaching them before they are intercepted by the royal armies. Her sisters nodded as they thought about her first 2 ideas. And the third? Asked Sorrela. He went for Casterly Rock and Lannisport because of their alliance with House Lannister. So, ask yourselves, what other great house has publicly allied with the Targaryens and arranged a betrothal? The Tyrells, Tyen realized. Exactly. So, if I was him, I would march the Northern Army to Highgarden and do to it what our ancestors did to it, though, not including burning the Oaken Seat, unfortunately, Nymeria explained. Out of those 3, which do you think he will choose? Sorrela asked. I think that he will choose the third, but I don't know for certain, Nymeria replied. If so, we should inform them that the harbor is bustling with activity, said Sorrela. What do you mean? Asked Oberyn. Sailors in hundreds and thousands are loading ships and making necessary repairs to ones at the Dreedock. John Connington and Adrian Celtigar have made numerous visits to the harbor to inspect all warships in the Royal Fleet. They are preparing for a naval invasion of the North, Oberyn reasoned. Sister, you will need to send a raven to Winterfell, Tyen said. No. Her sisters all turned to face her. What are you talking about? If we don't warn the North, they will be invaded and possibly destroyed, snapped Sorrela. We don't know enough. We need more information before we can send it to Winterfell. Sorrela, take us down to the harbor. Oberyn, you'll disguise yourself as one of Sorrela's sailors. Tyen and I will disguise as Hors. We'll get to the harbor master and see if there is any information we can learn from him. Once we get the information we need, whether it's the day they set sail or where they will collect the army they are taking or where it is in the north they will invade, only then will we send it on to Winterfell, Nymeria explained. Her sisters agreed to the plan and they disguised themselves accordingly, and whilst Oberyn didn't like being armed with one of Sorrela's cutlasses as opposed to her beloved spear, Nymeria didn't like having one of Tyen's daggers. Try not to cut yourself with it, Tyen said with an innocent giggle. They arrived at the harbour, and Obara held on to both Tyen and Nymeria by the straps of their dresses. Sarala led from the front. Will the harbour master be here? Obara whispered as they passed a rowdy bunch of sailors lazing and drinking. No. He frequents the Wild Shark Inn around this time every day for a drink and to meet his favorite Lysenhor. Usually he doesn't come back for another few hours, Sarala whispered back. Nymeria glanced around as they reached the harbour master's house. Sarala knocked. Master Silhard. I've got a gift for you. Well, actually, 2 gifts, she called, at which Tyen and Nymeria giggled. Gods, whores don't get paid enough to put up with shit like this, Nymeria thought as a young man answered the door. You want Sumithin, Cap'n? He asked. Garvin, isn't it? I have 2 gifts here for your master, said Sarala. The boss is away, with Tha Lysen girl with the huge big ass and the great big titties, he said hungrily whilst looking up and down at Tyen. Well, if he isn't here, Sarala was about to say. No. You can come stay, it ain't no issue, he said quickly. Fine. But if he's not here in 5 minutes, our deal is off, said Sarala. Yeah. All right, said Garvin. Whilst Sarala and Obara sat down on seats outside the house, Garvin offered to show Nymeria and Tyen around. Come, have a drink with me, said Garvin as Tyen counted a few silver stags he gave her. With pleasure. And perhaps I can do things you'll never forget, Tyen offered seductively. He may as well have exploded, Nymeria thought, as his face turned as red as a Lannister's flag and his cock was so erect that it looked as though it was hurting him. Arry would be proud of you, Nymeria thought as she was glad that this gave her the chance to look around. Nymeria quietly left and went into the office, where she looked around, and it didn't take long before she could find what she was looking for. Though there were growing mountains of paperwork on his desk, Nymeria found a report that was being prepared for Adrian Celtigar. To my Lord Celtigar, Master of Ships. His Grace's royal fleet shall be ready to set sail by the end of the moon. All of the necessary armaments and provisions have been collected and stored on board the ships. The royal fleet shall collect Sir Miles, the Crownlands and Stormlands army 3 days from now. Okay, good. This is good. They are close to setting sail, and collecting an army of Crownlanders and Loyalist Stormlanders, led by Miles Mouton. But there must be more, somewhere. But where? As she looked around, she found the harbour master's journal. This, she decided, was very useful indeed. You would think that given how prosperous the North is, that they would just take what food they want. But no, with winter coming, the army and our sailors will need thrice more food for when they make landfall in the Rills. At least we won't have to load the Grafton, Lannister, Grim, Hightower, Redwyne, Connington, Valerian, Celtigar and Whitehead fleets with food. Yes. We've got you now, you bastards. Nymeria quickly closed the journal and put the report for Adrian Celtigar back where she found it and decided to quickly make her way back to find Tyen. When she found her, she saw that Garvin was fast asleep on a chair. Or at least, he looked asleep. Wait, is he asleep? Knowing Tyen, he could very easily be dead or dying. Not that I would shed a tear for this cunt. Is he dead? Nymeria whispered. No, just piss-drunk, Tyen replied innocently. Did you find anything? She asked as they walked back to join Sarala and Obara outside. Yes, I found plenty of information. We need to get back now, said Nymeria. Obara grabbed them both whilst Nymeria and Tyen pretended to clean themselves as though they had just satisfied a patron. Chapter 51, The Dragonspan Marches. Chapter text. Ashura XX. In Winterfell, celebrations were long and there was scarce a sober man or woman to be found when the news had spread that Prydain had taken both Casterly Rock and Lannisport. Ash was glad to see Ned was recovering, not just in his leg, but also in his mind, and that he was no longer being plagued by night terrors. The 2 times before when he was plagued by night terrors, was after returning home from King's Landing upon refusing to swear allegiance to Rhaegar and after returning home from the War of the Long Night. After a second feast celebrating their eldest son's victories, Ashura sat in Ned's solar with he, Talisa, Maester Jellimund and Sir Roderick. 2 letters have arrived, my king and queen, said Maester Jellimund. Whom are they from? Asked Ashura. The first is from the Prince of the Wolf's Wood, my queen, and the second is from Lady Nymeria Sand, he replied. Nymeria. Good, she must have important news for us, Ashura reasoned after remembering her previous letters to Winterfell. Read Prydane's letter first, Maester, said Ned before he drank a herbal concoction brewed up by Maester Jellimund. Father, Mother and Talisa, my love. By now you will have heard of our success in capturing Casterly Rock and Lannisport. We have also joined with Uncle Aaron and Cousin Edric. They have brought the army of Starfall to join us at Lannisport, bringing 3,000 men. By the time you read this, we shall be marching to leave Casterly Rock and Lannisport. As well as angering the Lannisters and making them realize that they are not gods, it was to serve a message to those great houses that would dare side with the wolf prey. We march down the ocean road, to repeat this same message, to the Tyrells of Highgarden. I hope that the next you hear of me, it will be news of further victories in the name of Northern independence, freedom and justice against all whom would dare make an enemy of us. Yours faithfully, Prydain. Gods. First Casterly Rock and Lannisport. And now he marches for Highgarden. Highgarden. Gods, Ned said with worry. Do you think that he will not be successful? Talisa asked with worry. I worry that he may endanger the lives of all his men and those of his siblings and friends if he is too careless. They should be here, defending the north, not in the wretched and disgusting south, Ned replied. Is it impossible to take Highgarden? Asked Talisa. No, my princess. It's a strong castle, but nothing in comparison to something such as Casterly Rock. The only problem is that it is the capital of the Reach, and it sits at the crossroads of the Reach, a kingdom home to possibly less than 100,000 knights and warriors, explained Sir Roderick. What of the letter from Nymeria Sand, Maester? Asked Ashura. He opened the letter from Talisa's Dornish cousin and began to read aloud. Talisa, my beloved cousin. Rhaegar and Cersei are throwing a dark tantrum over the loss of Casterly Rock and Lannisport. And now they are sending an enormous armada of ships to invade the north. Paxter Redwyne and Miles Mouton lead an armada of 500 ships toward the Rills. They transport an army of 25,000 men. They should reach northern waters at least a moon after you receive this letter. I pray that this finds you well and wish you the best of luck in giving birth to your second child. I hope I can meet it when this war is at last over, dear cousin. Yours faithfully, Nymeria. 500 ships. 25,000 men. Ashura wasted no time in standing up and reaching for a quill, inkpot and parchment. Alysanne Mormont has been hungry for battle ever since she was given the command of the Western Fleet. Well, now is her chance, said Ashura. I think Sir Hakon Moller should be in command, my queen. He has more experience of fighting off southern fleets, suggested Sir Roderick. That is true, Sir Roderick. But, Sir Hakon is sailing the Eastern Fleet elsewhere, on some mission which we only just found about this morn from Lord Mandaly. Alysanne Mormont is our only option, said Ashura as she furiously began to write a letter for Bear Island. You must send a second letter, to Prydain. Tell him to end this campaign and return home to the north at once before he gets trapped behind southern lines, said Ned. John XXI. Cousin, I am truly sorry. There was no warning nor whisper that the Baratheons would turn coat once again and march on our home and all Stormlords loyal to the king, said Ronnet. The scum is taking advantage of the war that engulfs the entire realm. When thousands of good Stormlander men are taking up arms to fight for their king against the traitors of the north, the Baratheons break faith with House Targaryen again and march on their own people and their own subjects. This is it. House Baratheon will be rightly destroyed for this once the rebellion is over and my home is free of these traitorous scum. Do not dwell on that, cousin. You are here now, and that's what matters. How many men have you left? John asked as Kylers brought them 2 full wine cups. 18,000 10,000 joined Sir Miles Mouton and Lord Paxter Redwyne under the command of Lord Casper of House Wild, replied Ronnet. Good. Now with this should lure the Northerners to march back home, only to be crushed by the royal army as they cross into the Riverlands. And once they are defeated and Prydain Stark is at last killed, we shall march the royal armies to the Riverlands, the Stormlands and to the Vale. I will talk with the king to discuss the fates of the houses that have betrayed. Perhaps, if House Baratheon is eradicated, for all the treasons they have committed in our lifetimes, then House Connington may be elevated to the Lord Paramountcy of the Stormlands, Jon said. Both men grinned at the thought of the Baratheons being destroyed and for the Lord Paramountcy to be gifted to House Connington for its absolute and unwavering loyalty to House Targaryen in the 3 rebellions. I don't care to call myself Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. Ronnet knows more of being a lord than I. I would merely be content to be Hand of the King and to be at my Rhaegar's side and for Ronnet to serve as Lord of Griffin's Roost and as Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. A knock on the door disturbed them. See who it is, Kylers, said Jon. At once, my Lord Hand, he replied. Jon decided to wait until Kylers had announced whom it was before talking further with Ronnet. Sir Balon Swan, my Lord Hand, said Kylers. Handsome, chivalric, honorable and a good fighter. He is very deserving of his place in the Kingsguard, Jon thought as he regarded the newest entry to the Kingsguard after he was chosen by Jon and Sidrold accepted him more readily than he had reluctantly inducted Meryn Trant or Lyn Corbray into his sacred brotherhood. My Lord Hand. His Grace, the King summons you to the small council immediately, he announced. Rhaegar has recovered. I shall come immediately, Sir Balon, he said before standing up. He turned to his cousin. Apologies, cousin. We will talk later once business is concluded at the small council, said Jon. Of course, cousin. Until then, said Ronnet with a smile. Rhaegar has at last recovered. This is wonderful news. Now, he can take full control of the war as opposed to that golden poisonous bitch of a wife. And, once the war is over, I will ensure both Aegon and Rhaenys return to their Riftkjul places in the royal family. Jon strode with purpose rather than walk calmly to the small council. Hearing the news that Rhaegar has recovered enough to return to his duties gave him the energy he needed to get through this day. For the first time in what felt like such a long time, Jon felt as though things would return to normal and to what it should be, with Aegon as Crown Prince and Jon at his side and at Rhaegar's side, and with no Lannister bitch in the background scheming. Arriving at the small council, Jon felt his heart lift to see Rhaegar standing unaided by the window overlooking the courtyard. My king, he said. Rhaegar turned to face him. Jon smiled when Rhaegar smiled and held his arms out. Jon. It's good to see you so happy, he replied. Jon walked up and hugged him hard. And it is good to see you in better health, he said quickly. Rhaegar grunted in pain. Oh, gods. What the fuck were you thinking, Jon? Rhaegar, forgive me. I completely forgot. Jon said in a panic. Fear not, my friend. High spirits. I'm able to stand and to work, but Pycelle says that it will be a little longer before the wound is absolutely healed, he replied. Has it not? Jon asked. Half, I guess you can say, Rhaegar said as he sat down on the king's chair before he continued. The ribs have healed and it doesn't hurt so much when I breathe. Though the cut from Eddard Stark still hurts a little, he admitted. And I vow to you, my love, that I shall end this war by bringing you his head for doing this to you and bringing you Prydane's head for what he did to your brother, his dragon and your armies, Jon inwardly promised before the doors to the small council opened. Cersei, Tywin, Varys, Pycelle, Sir Kevan, Sidrold and Mace Tyrell entered. Your Grace, it lifts my heart to see you recovered and ready to continue your duties to the realm, said Sidrold, bowing his head. And it lifts my heart to see you all here and to be able to continue my duties, Lord Commander, Rhaegar replied with that smile. That damned smile that continued to make Jon fall in love with him. Your Grace, I bring good news, said Tywin. Let's hear it, my lord, said Rhaegar as they all took their seats. Jaime has arrived at the capital with the Westerlands army to join with the royal armies. Now, we may be able to march on the Westerlands, liberate my home and at last crush the Northern army and avenge Prince Viserys, he said. Hearing him speak of Viserys made Rhaegar tighten his fists, as though he blamed himself for the death of his beloved brother. Do not blame yourself, my love. The fault lies with the man who murdered him. How many men does that bring the royal armies to? Asked Rhaegar. 180,000, Your Grace. Though many of the Westerlands army are still wounded and healing from the fighting at the Lion's Ford, including Sir Jaime, explained Sidrold. Both Cersei and Tywin stiffened in anger at the mention of the Battle of Lion's Ford. It was then that Rhaegar turned to Cersei. Where is my son? Where is Jaehaerys? Why is he not here? Yes. Where is he? He is your eldest son and should be at small council sessions and learning what it means to be a king. Though he won't ever become such a thing, not while I am hand of the king. He is training, my love. He hopes to fight against the Northerners and avenge his uncle and make you proud of him, Cersei said with a perfectly trained smile. My lords. My king, I have important news, regarding the Northern army. It reached me from my little birds this morning, interrupted Varys before Rhaegar could question her further. I expect Jaehaerys at all further small council sessions from this day forth. He is the heir and will be king one day. He must learn what it means to be a king when the time comes, said Rhaegar. Of course, my love. Of course, said Cersei, though she frowned slightly, as if embarrassed at being talked to in this way in front of the small council, and her father and her uncle. Jon just grinned at her being humiliated so. What news is this, Lord Varys? Asked Rhaegar, turning from his queen to his spymaster. The Northern army have left Casterly Rock and Lannisport. They are marching south and bypassed Cricket Hall entirely by going cross-country rather than using its roads. They are marching currently on the Ocean Road, the last my birds sung to me, your grace, explained Varys. What? You mean to say that they have left the Westerlands entirely, Lord Varys? Asked Cersei. Yes, my queen. They abandoned the Rock and Lannisport and left not a single soldier to garrison either, and they took no nobles with them as prisoners. Lord Tyrion and Lady Melita are safe still in Casterly Rock, as is the Lady Melita's daughter and all other nobles, said Varys. That's not something I would have expected. Did he realize that he would be trapped if he stayed in Casterly Rock? But why does he march on the Ocean Road? And why did he not bring any prisoners with him? Something is wrong. But what? All of the small council, including Cersei and Rhaegar, looked confused over Prydane's move. Only Tywin seemed to show no sign of confusion, but Jon could see how hard his eyes were looking around the room, as if trying to find some inspiration or idea. Idea. I need an idea. Jon turned to Sir Alisa, whom was standing guard at the door. Sir Alisa, have a map of Westeros brought here at once. My lord hand, he replied in deference before leaving to bring a map. What could it mean that they have left the Westerlands? Do they plan to link up with their allies in the Riverlands, Stormlands and Vale? Asked Sir Kevan. I know not, Sir Kevan. But what I do know, is that they have already been joined by more allies. Before leaving Casterly Rock, 3,000 men bearing the banner of House Dane sailed into Lannisport under the command of Prydain Stark's uncle Aron, Lord of Starfall, and his son and heir Edric. Arthur Dane will be at his nephew's side naturally. And what will the small folk think when they see the legendary Sword of the Morning fighting alongside his now legendary nephew, Prydain Dragonspan? Sir Alisa brought a large map of Westeros and laid it down onto the table. Varys pointed at Casterly Rock on the map and then traced the road from there to Cricket Hall before stopping at the Ocean Road. Why the Ocean Road? What are you doing, Prydain Stark? What nefarious plans are you trying to carry out now? But when he saw where the Ocean Road led to, that's when he suddenly thought of just why Prydain Stark was marching that way. Stark, you are as cunning as a fucking wolf. By the gods and all my ancestors, Jon muttered as his eyes opened wide. Lord Hand. What's wrong? Asked Pycelle. Your Grace, I know what he's doing, said Jon. What? What is he doing, Lord Hand? Asked Cersei. Jon was frustrated that no one else, not even Tywin or Varys, had seemed to figure it out as he had done. Think about it, Your Grace. He could have conquered all of the Westerlands after he had captured Casterly Rock and Lannisport, but he didn't. He has a large enough army, especially with his uncle Aron reinforcing him. He could have conquered the Westerlands and laid waste to all castles, cities, towns, villages and farms, but he just marched south, avoiding Cricket Hall, rather than capture it. He didn't capture Casterly Rock merely to rest, to reward or to feed his army. He captured it to send a message to all those who oppose the Starks of Winterfell and those whom are married and allied into House Targaryen. That's all very well, Lord Hand. But you still haven't explained what it is he is doing, asked Richard. Highgarden. He's marching on Highgarden, Tywin realized, staring at the map and tracing his finger from Cricket Hall, down the Ocean Road and onto the crossroads of the Reach, Highgarden. Mace Tyrell's eyes opened wide at Tywin Lannister's words, and he stared at the map and took several deep breaths whilst he began to sweat profusely. Gods, no. No, he all but screamed before standing up and rushing for the door. Lord Tyrell. Calm yourself. Rhaegar said. My king. That northern renegade will burn Highgarden. All armies of the Reach are here at King's Landing. I cannot leave my home so unguarded, not when he is going there. It will not stand if he could take Casterly Rock. My wife and my eldest son and heir are there, he replied, panicking, shaking and close to tears. The armies of the Reach will not be alone, Lord Tyrell. Prince Jaehaerys will lead 15,000 men and join half of the armies of the Reach alongside his dragon Carnaxes, said Rhaegar. Your Grace, thank you. Thank you, said the panicking Lord of Highgarden, whom was beginning to at last calm down. Lord Tyrell, be cautious when you face him. Prydain Stark has proven he is no green boy that pisses grass. He is a formidable opponent and an extremely dangerous warrior, Jon advised. Fear not, my Lord Hand. I will not underestimate this foe, replied the Lord of Highgarden. With any luck, the Starks will do my work for me and kill Jaehaerys. Even if he is a traitor, Prydain Stark is no opponent to be taken lightly. He is likely the greatest warrior any of us will ever meet, and he is perhaps the biggest threat the realm has faced since Maelys the Monstrous. He has become even more of a threat than his father, Robert Baratheon, Jon Arryn and Hoster Tully combined, if that's even imaginable. Chapter 52, Rose of Steel Thorns. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Interlude 23, Kristen Stewart in Snow White Earned, by Bsasser Daughtridge, #Bifunky. Alysanne Mormont, Kristen Stewart. Milady, the Southern Fleet has been spotted. They will be here within 2 hours, said one of her sailors. Finally. I'm fucking hungry to kill some Southern cunts who think they can invade the North, Alysanne said as she looked at the map. Lyra threw her axe at the practice board she had set up at the foot of the mast. Their youngest sister Lyanna, whom was with cousin Jorah, mother, Daisy and Jarell fighting on land, had previously painted an image of the Targaryen dragon on it for Lyra to use as target practice. Got the fucker's balls, she grinned before she drew the axe from it and waved it around a few times before sheathing her axe and standing alongside Alysanne. Why don't we charge the fuckers now, sister? They don't know we're here and that we're ready for them, she said. Lyra, if we did that, they'd reform positions, and whilst we boarded and burned their front ships, they would have their warships surround and flanks us. Or whilst their transport ships landed an army of less than 30,000 southern cunts on northern shores, Alysanne snapped, turning to her. Let the cunts come and land. They'd freeze and die before they ever took a castle, she replied. And what about the villages standing in the way of each and every castle? Bear Island has been raided by Ironborn cunts for centuries. Mainlander villages should understand what is like. Maybe then they'd fucking toughen up, Lyra reasoned. The king and queen will think differently to that, sister. Now, you leave the planning of our battle to me and I'll leave the castrating of southern shits to you, said Alysanne. So what is the plan? Lyra asked. We wait for them to sail past Cape Crooken, and then just as we can see the rearmast of their armada, we attack them from Cape Crooken. When they see the signal fire from the beacon tower at Flint's Finger, Robin Flint will sail his fleet and hit them on the opposite flank, Alysanne explained. Won't their formations be too wide for such an ambush, milady? Asked Canute, the first mate of Alysanne's ship, the Beclaw. No. According to a raven from our Mallister friends at Seaguard, they have made their formation thin and straight, like an arrow shaft. 2 lines of warships on both flanks whilst protecting the transport ships in the center, Alysanne replied. So they'll be munched up from both flanks, before we can hit the transports, Lyra concluded. Aye. And we can either board or burn the lines. Or we can just burn the 2 lines of warships and leave the transport ships be, only for them to burn, Alysanne said innocently with a shrug. Who gives a shit about these southern cunts? They chose their lot when they bowed to the ones who attacked the king and queen, said Lyra before spitting on the side. Aye, sister. Who gives a shit after all they have done to the north, to the king and the queen? Alysanne practiced dueling with her sword and shield against Lyra and her large 2-handed axe. Whilst Lyra was the strongest out of the two, Alysanne was faster and a quick thinker when using her sword and shield, as she had been trained by Uncle Jorah whilst Lyra had learned from Mother. Beat you again, Sister Alysanne said before throwing her broken shield aside. Because you're used to fighting on a ship. I should be back and fighting on dry land, Lyra moaned. Well, when we've finished here, you'll be able to join the army and take the fight to the rest of the southern cunts. They've got massive armies, so Prince Prydain won't have all the fun to himself, said Alysanne. Before Lyra could say anything, Canute made himself heard. Milady, the southern ships. Alysanne sheathed her sword and drew her spyglass. She peered through and could see dozens of ships sailing past, unable to see Alysanne's fleet waiting for them. Signal the fleet, quietly. And send a raven to Flint's Finger, Alysanne ordered. Aye, milady, replied Canute. Lyra grabbed a tankard of Carhold bronze and drained the whole tankard before throwing it aside and slapping her chest with her fist. She loudly belched after slapping her chest. Any louder, sister, and they'll fucking hear you, Alysanne commented. Let them come, Ailey. I'll slaughter the cunts all the same, she boasted before stretching her arms out and spitting over the side. Her fleet began to get the sails down and the Beclaw began to advance slowly at the head of the fleet. Milady, I can see the end of their armada, said Canute, pointing at the base of the cliffs of Cape Crackan. Alysanne turned to look at the rearmast of the armada. This is it. This is it. Alysanne said with a grin. Signal the fleet to attack. We'll send these fuckers to the seven hells soon enough. To arms, men and women of Bear Island. To arms. Hardened sailors of Bear Island cheered and roared as Canute signaled the rest of the fleet. Alysanne was glad to see her sister cheer and roar the loudest. Archers, to your positions. And light up. Load the ballista. Wait on my command. Alysanne bellowed. She grinned at seeing the southern ships beginning to slow down as they saw her and her fleet coming straight at them. Don't worry, southern cunts, I know that you must be unused to such cold weather. So allow us to warm you up before you leave for the seven hells. Lyra started banging her smaller axe against her shield and began to shout at the southerners. We're coming for you, you fat southern cunts. Freezing your balls off. Don't fucking worry. My axe will chop them off before I chop off your fucking heads, she yelled whilst sheathing her larger axe at her side. Alysanne pointed at the nearest two warships. Sister, take half the crew and get the ship on the right. I'll take the one on the left, Alysanne said. Aye, sister. We'll have plenty of fun with these scum, don't you worry, Lyra replied before they clapped hands. Alysanne drew her sword and shouted to her men and women, and just as the ship grounded to a halt, she jumped aboard the enemy warship and cut down a knight in badly outfitted armor. She beheaded a sailor who charged at her with a short sword. She battered 4 sailors in the face before kicking them and throwing them over the side and into the freezing waters. She grinned when she saw the ship's captain. Nice ship you've got here, Captain. I think it'll make a nice addition to my fleet, she said. Never, northern whore, he bellowed. Oh, now I really want to fucking spill your guts out. Had you not said that, I would have given you a quick and painless stab. Alysanne kept her word, and as the captain hammered his sword onto her shield, she thrust it across, disarming him, and then she eviscerated across his stomach. He fell to his knees as his guts fell out of his belly, trailing around like bloody snakes. Alysanne cut his throat as he groaned and moaned and blood spilled from his mouth. Alysanne turned to see her sister cheer as she chopped down a ship's captain. Ailey. I've just taken a second ship. Already, she boasted. Oh, you're fucking on, now, sister. Alysanne shouted back. This is my battle. I planned it all. My victory. I'm not going to let her capture more ships than me. Just as Robin Flint and his fleet ambushed the other side of the southern armada, Alysanne was leading her crew to take more ships than Lyra. She had captured another 5 when she spotted a glorious prize at the head of escaping transport ships, just as transports were being burned by archers and ballista. Now that has to be the most stupidly decorated ship I've ever seen in my life. Is that gold decorating the forecastle? Are those emeralds on the figurehead? But this ship is a 3-master. And that must be 100 oars painted white and gold on just one side. This has to be the flagship. Let's see. Burgundy colors, and the sails are decorated with a grapevine. And the figurehead is that of a fancy-dressed southern woman wearing a crown and holding a grapevine in one hand. And Paxter Redwine was in command of the armada. That makes this his flagship, the Arbor Queen. It is a beautiful ship, in spite of its unnecessary decoration. Would be nice if it ended up in my fleet. Willis Mondaly took the Valerian's beloved Pride of Driftmark and keeps it as a war prize in White Harbor. Well, I shall do the same to the red wines. This'll make a fine prize of war at Bear Island. Alysanne led her crew back onto the Beclaw, just as Lyra and her men and women returned, all of whom were drenched in blood. Brains and blood were dripping off of Lyra's two-handed axe, whom was just spitting blood that had dribbled onto her lips, not her own blood. "What happened to your small axe, sister?" asked Alysanne. "The captain of that Vale ship there broke it in half with his sword. So I replied in kind by breaking his face with my fists before I killed the cunt," she explained. "How many ships you get, Ailey?" she asked keenly. 6. "What about you, sister?" asked Alysanne. "Same. Would have been 7 if not for that Vale twat. Shall we get some more before the rest burn or escape?" Lyra asked keenly. "We could, sister. Or we could take the flagship, that's trying to escape, over there," Alysanne suggested as she pointed at it. Lyra looked at where she was pointing. "Well, it would be rude if we didn't welcome them personally to the north. Flagship to flagship. You know how the Southerners and mainlanders love their courtesies and greetings," Lyra replied with a grin. "Yes, sister. Yes. Let's go and greet them personally. Canute. Get the sail down. This day isn't over yet. We're taking their flagship," Alysanne called out. Alysanne brought out 4 tankards of Carhold bronze from her cabin. "2 for me and 2 for you, sister," said Alysanne. "To House Mormont and taking the Arbor Queen," Ailey, Lyra replied as they toasted their tankards and quickly drank from them. Just as Alysanne finished her second tankard, she saw how the Arbor Queen was trying to maneuver and escape. "No escaping for you cunts. Not after you tried to invade my country. Bring us up to the side. And let's send these cunts to the 7 hells," Alysanne roared after burping from her drinks. Lyra led cheers as well as banging the shaft of her axe onto the hull of the ship. Alysanne admired the size of the ship, it was twice as big as the Beclaw. She threw a grappling hook at the forecastle and pulled hard to secure it in place before she began to climb on board. She unsheathed her sword as a panicked sailor charged at her with a short sword before stopping. "You're a woman," he realized. "And you're a fucking idiot," she replied before stabbing him in the face. She cut down 2 more sailors before Lyra joined the battle and chopped her axe down onto 3 sailors and then a knight. Alysanne spotted 3 men dressed in fine and beautiful armor at the rear of the bridge. "That fancy armor just makes you a target," she thought with a grin as she ran up the stairs to get to them, cutting down 3 more men to get there whilst the rest of her crew climbed aboard and joined battle. One had ginger hair like Tormund Giantsbane and he wore chainmail as well as a hauberk decorated with the grapevine of House Redwine. Paxter Redwine. The second also wore chainmail and a hauberk, decorated with the red fish of House Mouton. Miles Mouton. And the third wore a breastplate and steel plate armor. His hauberk was decorated with the maelstrom of House Wild. Caspar Wild. Before any words could be said from any of the 3, Lyra joined Alysanne and pointed at the 3. "You southern cunts have picked a fine time to come to the North's shores," she said with a grin. Caspar Wild drew a one-handed warhammer and picked up his shield and charged at Lyra. "Finally. A good opponent. For a fucking southern mainlander," Lyra yelled with a laugh as she swung her axe at him, which he narrowly blocked with his shield, though he grunted as it made an impact on it. Miles Mouton drew his sword and pointed it at Alysanne. "Whom are you, my lady?" he demanded. "I'm Alysanne of House Mormont. Admiral of the North's Western Fleet," she replied proudly as she pointed her own sword at him. Alysanne charged at him, which he wasn't expecting. He hopelessly tried to cut across at her arm, but she easily dodged it and punched him hard in his unprotected face. He grunted from the punch and then Alysanne cut down her sword onto his, disarming him, and then she stabbed him. "You've fucking failed. The North has won here, and it will always win against you southern cunts. And soon, it will be the Wolf Prey's turn to fucking die," she whispered to him as he gasped for breath and bled from his chest and from his mouth and nose. As she wrenched her sword from his chest, she kicked him down, and saw how he twitched a few times before he had finally breathed his last. Alysanne turned to see Lyra chop her axe into Caspar Wild's heel just as he had cut into her shoulder with a dagger. He screamed as he fell to his knees, and then Lyra chopped her axe across, beheading him before rejoining Alysanne. Lyra ignored her bleeding shoulder whilst she panted as she made her way to join Alysanne. "Let me return to the Arbor with my ship, and I'll pay you a ransom of 50,000 gold dragons," my lady's Paxter Redwine said immediately. "Not enough," Alysanne said, bored with listening to him speak, before throwing him overboard. "Enjoy the voyage back home. Without your beloved Arbor Queen, ginger fucknuts." Lyra bellowed as he began to swim to another ship bearing the colors of House Redwine. "This is a ridiculously decorated ship," Alysanne said, looking around. "Make a nice addition to the fleet, though, Ailey. Or as a trophy for Bear Island and House Mormont, like the Mondalis have got the Pride of Driftmark," Lyra suggested. Alysanne ignored her as she turned her eyes to the rest of the Southern Armada. Over 100 ships were fleeing whilst the rest were either burning or whose hulls were red with blood and blood-stained corpses. "Lyra, this is a battle that House Mormont will be forever remembered for, by the north and by the south," Alysanne said proudly as she surveyed the many southern ships, either burning or captured. Laura's 7. "May the warrior march with you, brothers," Margaery said fearfully as she hugged Garlan and then Laura's. "Thank you, Sister," Laura's replied. "We'll be all right, have no fear, sister. We shall reach Willa's and Mother in time," Garlan assured her as he hugged her. "I know, but all the same, I just fear for you all," she replied as father joined them. "Do not worry, my beautiful Rose. It will take more than an army of Northerners to stop the brave men of the Reach from fighting to protect their homes and their families," father said confidently before he gently kissed Margaery's forehead and then hugged her. "You're safe here with your grandmother. Just keep us in your prayers and we shall be fine," said father. "I will, father," she said before she hugged her brothers one last time before Laura's climbed onto his horse, whom he named Gallant. Just outside the city, the ladies of the Reach, whom had come to King's Landing in preparation for Margaery's wedding to Jaehaerys, were gifting roses and favors to Reach knights and lords and wishing them luck in fighting the Northern army. Laura's had lost count of the many knights whom vowed to maiden ladies that "I will slay Prydain Stark for you, my lady. We march to battle and to war, old friend." "And about time too," Laura's whispered to Gallant. Gallant neighed quietly and stomped one of his hooves onto the grass, like he would often do before they would compete in a tourney. Laura's patted his neck in reply as he smiled. "And we march to save our country from those northern savages." Though Laura's was nervous about the thought of facing Prydain Stark. There were many stories told about him, about how great a warrior he was and how he beheaded Aerys Aulus. And when the battered and blooded remnants of the Westerland's army camped on the outskirts of the capital, and Laura's marched past with the Reach army and he saw the Westerland's soldiers, either exhausted, wounded or looking at them with fear. "Where do you march, milord?" a soldier asked Laura's. "To the Reach, to save our country from Prydain Stark," Laura's replied proudly. But the mere mention of that name sent a shockwave to all of the Westerland's men whom heard it. Most walked or ran away, some stared absently at the ground, as if reliving a night terror before their very eyes, or they just stared in apprehension at the Reach army. "May the gods watch over you on the hell you march to, milord," another soldier said whom walked with a limp. "Yes, for he is no mere man, milord. He is the warrior himself," added another whose breastplate was broken in numerous places. "All of these stories about him, they cannot be true." Two men began to ride toward the head of the column, where Laura's father, Garlan and various other Reach lords were riding. One was a handsome and red-haired man. Laura's looked at his hauberk and recognized the burning tree sigil on it. Sir Adam Marbrand, heir of Ashmark. The other Laura's recognized from Tony's, a brutish man with a growing dark beard, a scarred and hardened face, a large and ugly great sword strapped to his back and whom wore a hauberk with the sigil of a charging brown boar on it. "Sir Lyle Crickehole the Strong Boar." "Sir Adam." Sir Lyle said father, offering his hand. "My Lord Tyrell," said Sir Adam, before he shook hands with father, followed by Sir Lyle. "We came to wish you luck in fighting the Northern Scourge." "Gods know you will need all of it," said Sir Adam. "What can you tell us of the Northern army and of Prydain Stark, Sir Adam?" Randil Tarly asked keenly. "Don't fall for any tricks, my lords. And you must never ever underestimate them solely on the basis of their homeland. You may all be cunning commanders on the battlefield, but so is Prydain Stark. He will be easy to spot. Just look for a tall man with a Valyrian steel greatsword and wears a helm of a snarling wolf's head, with violet eyes hiding behind that helm. He is far faster than Sir Jaime and far more skilled than his uncle Arthur Dayne and far stronger than the late Sir Gregor Clegane. I even saw him cut down 10 men with one blow. So, if you do come across him, never ever fight him. He will kill you. If you can, fill him full of arrows, said Sir Adam. Arrows? That's cowardly and dishonorable. No true knight of the Reach would dare stoop to such acts, even in face of a warrior as apparently skilled as Prydain Stark. Father snapped. Then all true knights of the Reach will fall to his sword, my lord, Sir Lyle replied in equal tone of voice as father. But, Sir Lyle, no one man in the world can be as skilled as that, said Garlan. Sir Lyle turned to Garlan, with a fearful look in his eyes. Oh, but he is. The 2 Westerlands knights rode back to their camp. The Crownlands army of Prince Jaehaerys had at last left the capital as the Reach army marched past the Westerlands camp. But Jaehaerys was not riding with them on horseback. No, instead he was riding on Carnaxes and flying around the capital and above both armies. I hope Prydain Stark does kill him. Prince Tyrese is a good young lad and would make a better king than him, and one whom could easily be controlled by House Tyrell. Notes. Battle of Cape Kraken is based on the Battle of Salamis, between Themistocles of Athens and Xerxes of Persia. Chapter 53, The Sword of Morning once again. Chapter text. Jaime 14. I used to look so handsome, Jaime thought as he looked at the mirror brought to him and at the scar reaching from the top of his forehead to the middle of his right cheek. He found it strange when he had at last awoke and was told for how long he had been unconscious. How are you feeling, my lord? Asked Pycelle. I'll feel better once I have had some food, Jaime replied. I shall have some brought to you and let your father know that you have recovered and fully conscious now, he said. I wonder if he considers me so at fault now. If so, that would feel good. I'm exhausted of him trying to pour his hopes of me being his perfect heir to House Lannister and to the Westerlands. Wait, Pycelle. Tell me, what has happened in the world since the battle? Jaime demanded. Pycelle sighed with sadness as he thought about his question. Nothing good, my lord. Casterly Rock and Lannisport both fell, to Prydain Stark. What the fuck? Pycelle saw his look of apprehension and explained how he had captured it. Jaime suddenly remembered what the Stark boy told him before sparing him. Listen to the news of when my army and I march to destroy that which you Lannisters love most. And when you do, you will know that all debts are paid between House Stark and House Lannister. And when you see Rhaegar, your father and your sister, tell them that winter is coming. And what is he doing now? Asked Jaime. He marches to Highgarden to do the same to the seat of House Tyrell what he had done to the seat of the great House Lannister, said Pycelle. If he could take both Casterly Rock and Lannisport, then Highgarden and the likes of Old Town and the Arbor will be absolutely no challenge for him. Not even the Reach armies will be a match for him and his army. What of the rest of the realm? Jaime asked. Robert Baratheon leads a rebellion in the Stormlands and has captured the castles of all Stormlords whom honor their oaths to his grace. Edmure Tully has called the banners of the Riverlands, but has ordered for his bannermen to make no move yet. Elbereth Arryn has called the banners of the Vale and taken control of the Vale, whilst Drold Grafton has led the loyal banners of the Vale to King's Landing. Doran Martell has called the banners of Dorne but has not pledged allegiance to his grace. The world is turning against us. And the ironic thing is that it was Rhaegar whom started all of it, by wanting Eddard Stark and Asher Dayne arrested. And he hates me for my part in it. What of Eddard Stark? Is he still a prisoner? No, he escaped just before your defeat, Lion's Ford replied Pycelle. Pycelle eventually left whilst Jaime thought about all that has transpired across Westeros and how Mace Tyrell was marching to certain defeat. Jaime was at least happy that Loron was in King's Landing and had been knighted by his grandfather Daemon Marbrand. But the more he thought about the war, the memories would return, of his brief but frightening duel with the frightening Prydain Stark. And every time he saw his face, or his eyes, in his memories, he shivered and he could feel the pain in his chest and his ribs. A servant entered his chambers, holding a large platter filled with food and a pitcher of water. My lord, he asked, offering a filled cup. Thank you, Jaime replied before drinking thirstily from the cup and reaching for a chicken breast. He looked up to see father and Cersei enter. Jaime. It is good see you with us once more, brother, said Cersei. Jaime sat up, groaning as he did so and putting the chicken bones on the platter. Leave us, father, ordered the servant. Yes, my lord, he replied before taking his leave. You failed miserably in battle. And you left our home unguarded. He crossed into the Westerlands and he took my home, father snapped as he stood above him. How could any of us have predicted that this would come to pass? That the Stark boy would take the rock? Jaime all but shouted, but was unable to because of the damage to his ribs. Savor that pain. Let it fester. May it forever be a lesson for you to not underestimate the Stark boy as you call him. He has crushed 4 entire armies and now marches on Highgarden with an army of 50,000 men, reinforced by the arrival of his uncle Arondane and the army of Starfall, said father. Who are you to admonish me for referring to him as the Stark boy? You did the same before Riverbond. And he will be joined by his uncle Arthur, whose legendary skill would easily be bested by his nephew, Jaime thought as he compared the 2 men and their skills. I've seen Arthur Dayne fight many times, and even his skill does not compare to that of his nephew. Jaime did not deign reply, he just blinked and grimaced as he reached for his battered and broken ribs, desperately trying to will the pain into stopping. Father. Jaime looked up to see Lauren standing at the door. Jaime then turned to father, whom merely glared at Jaime before turning away and saying, we will talk later. Arthur 11. Gods, they've grown, Arthur thought when he laid eyes on Halric and Deanna sparring. Halric, I thought I told you to never leave your guard lowered even when dueling, another Arthur jested to his nephew. Both turned to him in surprise. Uncle Arthur. Deanna said in surprise. Both ran up to him and he hugged his niece and nephew. It's good to see you here, uncle. With you joining us, the war is most certain to be a northern victory, Halric said. Perhaps, though it sounds as though you have been doing just fine without my help, Arthur commented. It's no wonder Dawn thought that Prydain was worthy to touch it when he was still a babe. Did it foresee the future and all he would accomplish in this war? From slaying a mighty dragon to crushing outnumbering armies to taking the great and unconquerable Casterly Rock. If he was a Dane, he would have been the greatest sword of the morning of them all, far surpassing his uncle Arthur. Where are your brothers and your sister? Arthur asked. Planning the siege of Highgarden and fighting the armies of the Reach, when they come, uncle, replied Halric. Uncle Arthur. The Tyrells seemed so slow to realize that we were marching on Highgarden, Deanna noted. Hardly surprising, DY. That sounds like Mace Tyrell. A good man, just not a great one, or a wise one. Or even a clever one, come to think of it, Arthur commented, remembering his encounters with the Lord of Highgarden. No surprise, uncle. Given his defeat at Greywater, Halric pointed out. Yes, there's that as well. They brought him to a large pavilion decorated with the colors of House Stark and the leaping and snarling direwolf. Inside, Arthur looked around at the many assembled lords of the north and was glad to see his brother Aron and Aron's only son Edric seated with the northern lords. Arthur also looked around to see his other nephews, Ulric, Artos and Rickon, and warrior niece, Arya. And standing above them all was Prydain. When he had last seen them all was at Artos' wedding to Wyla Mandaeli. He remembered how happy and content Prydain was during it all, being married to his beloved wife Talisa. Arthur thought that Talisa Magai was a lovely girl and that she was a good match for Prydain. But the Prydain he saw in command of this army looked nothing like the happy and quiet boy whom impressed his uncle with touching Dawn easily as a babe. His eldest nephew stood in armor decorated of chainmail and boiled leathers like all northerners, but he also wore a steel breastplate decorated with a direwolf. But what surprised Arthur the most was the helm sitting on an armor stand next to ice. The helm was a snarling direwolf's head, which just looked frightening. That helm alone must be why the stories about him are told in hushed tones, as though he could summon an army of wolves on his enemies or cleaves his enemies to pieces with ice like a knife through butter. But Arthur could also see how burdened his nephew was, as though the war was taking a great toll on his mind and that he longed for home. Uncle Arthur. Arya called out from her seat. All eyes turned to Arthur as he stood at the entrance to the pavilion. Arthur smiled at Arya as she, Ulric, Artos, Rickon and Prydain all walked to Arthur and hugged him. Glad to see you here, uncle, said Artos as he hugged Arthur. "And I'm glad to be here," he replied as Arryn and Edric came to greet him. Arthur sat down with Arryn and Edric when the war council resumed. "What have I missed, brother?" Arthur asked Arryn. "Prydain sent Benfred and Brandon Tallheart to scout around the area for any sign of the Reach army," explained Arryn. "Intelluxive, things you probably didn't know about the Last Kingdom's Harry Gilby Instinct magazine." "Benfred Tallheart, Harry Gilby. How far is it to Highgarden, my lord?" asked Conrad. "Half a day's march," Benfred replied. "Assuming we don't come across the Tyrell army till then. I'd love to cut down some flower-brained southerners. And given how massive their army is, there will be plenty to go around the whole army. The Umbers, Mormonts, Giantsbans, Thans and Karstarks would be having too much fun slaughtering them." Benfred picked a peach from his horse's saddlebag. Since he was put in command of the scouts, he also foraged his own food alongside his scouting force, whom had been named the Wild Hares. And Benfred liked the food of the Reach. "These flowers may not know what war is really like, nor how to survive when winter comes, but fucking hells, they grow nice food here. My lord." Benfred heard a shout from one of his men up ahead. Benfred rode to see what it was. "What is it?" he asked. "Look there, my lord." "What's left of a Tyrell scouting party?" the scout said, pointing at a Tyrell scouting party. "Or, what was left of it? Where is it that these wolf packs are coming from? Not that I care about the southerners they kill and eat, but why the fuck are they hunting after them?" Benfred examined the corpses, with enormous gashes across the heels, arms and necks of most of the corpses. But as he was doing so, he noticed something else that all the men had in common. The sigil of a centaur. The centaur is the sigil of House Caswell, whose castle is very fucking far away. In fact, it's right at the border with the Crown Lands. "What's the nearest castle to here, Conrad?" Benfred asked, turning to him. Conrad drew the map from his saddlebag and glanced at it whilst chewing on some apple he had been cutting up. "Old Oak, my lord. Seat of House Oakurt. Mind you, it be 30 or so miles behind the army. So these can't be Oakurt lands, my lord," he replied. "These men are of House Caswell. House Caswell's seat is at Bitterbridge, right on the other side of the Mandaya and near the border with the Crown Lands. If Caswell men are all of the way out here, then that can mean only one thing," said Benfred. "The Tyrell army is here, my lord?" asked the man who found the patrol. "Aye. And it won't be too far away," Benfred said with a grin. "Good. We will get a battle with the Reach army, just as Prydain was planning. But, the question is, where do we start looking?" Benfred asked of his men. "I would say north, my lord. The tracks of these scouts came from the north," recommended Conrad. "I think we should go east," Ben said. Brandon, his cousin, whom was strangely staring at the east. "Why's that, cousin?" Benfred asked. "Because I can see a fucking dragon flying around in an easterly direction," he replied. "What?" Benfred turned to the east and looked at the hills beyond the fields. "A dragon. Hide. Hide. Get into the woods now." Benfred ordered the men. Brandon, Conrad and the men quickly followed him into the woods, sheltering alongside the dead men. "Conrad, keep the men here and keep them down." "Bran, with me," Benfred whispered. They crawled together to the edge of the woods where they had just been standing and staring at the dragon. Benfred drew his spyglass and looked at the dragon. "What do you see?" Brandon asked. "A rider on the back of the dragon. Holding a crossbow," said Benfred. "Must be Prince Jaehaerys. Have you heard the stories about him favoring the crossbow?" Brandon asked. "Aye. If he's here, then he must have come with an army of the Crown Lands. And Mace Tyrell must be here too, with the Reach army. Prydain will be glad of the chance to slaughter that little fucker for imprisoning and torturing the king," said Brandon. "And I don't know about you, cousin, but I look forward for the chance to kill some more southern shits," Benfred said with a grin. Before he could reply, they heard a roar which chilled Benfred from his head to his toes. The dragon breathed fire at nothing in particular in the sky. Benfred glanced at the spyglass at the dragon, where he could see Jaehaerys lying back on the dragon, as though bragging about the fact that he was riding it and he was playing for an audience like a minstrel. What if he's showing off to the southern army? "Bran, take the men and get back to Prydain. Now said Benfred. I'm not going without you, Ben Brandon said, grabbing him by his shoulder. Go. I need to stay and find out how many infantry and cavalry they've got, Benfred replied desperately, hoping his cousin would see his reasoning. Fine, I'll go. But what if that dragon sees us? Or smells us? Brandon whispered. It won't. Take the men and get out from the other side of the wood and make your way back to the camp, before that dragon catches a whiff of the dead Caswell pricks back there. And tell Prydain what I'm doing. I'll go now, Benfred replied. At that, Brandon turned around and crawled back to rejoin their men. Good luck, cousin, whispered Brandon whispered. You too, cousin, said Benfred before he crawled to his horse and began quietly riding to the edge of the wood whilst watching the dragon. Come on, Targaryen princeling. Stop fucking showing off and land. I need to find out how many men you've brought to the fray, he whispered whilst looking through his spyglass. The dragon finally stopped spinning in circles and started to land. That's it, Benfred thought before he urged his horse onwards as fast as he could before he could be spotted or heard by southern soldiers, or worse, that dragon. As he reached the base of a hill, he climbed down from his horse and drew his dagger. He crouched down and crept up the hill and looked around at an enormous campsite. Pavilions bearing dozens of noble sigils could be seen everywhere. And right in the center were two massive pavilions. One bearing the golden rose of the Tyrells and the other bearing the red three-headed dragon of the Targaryens. Benfred caught sight of a massive enclosure that housed the dragon he had seen flying earlier. At least 24 cattle were being pushed into the enclosure before the dragon would burn them and then eat them. Greedy bastard. That's just making me fucking hungry, Benfred thought. Right, I've been around here long enough. I need to get back to father and to Prydain. Benfred turned around slowly, with his hand on his dagger, half expecting a southern soldier to catch him. He looked around carefully, not seeing any soldier nearby. Benfred crept back down to the hill and saw his horse, and saw the soldier petting and stroking Benfred's horse. He bore the sigil of the lit tower of House Hightower on the cape hanging from his hauberk. What a beautiful horse you are. But where is your master? And what sigil is this? He asked. I can't kill him. Not here, so close to the camp. Benfred quietly sheathed his dagger and whistled quietly. He turned around and Benfred swung his helm at his face. He fell to the ground, knocked out. Benfred climbed onto his horse and began to ride away. He didn't calm down nor slow his horse down until they got a whole mile away from the enemy camp. He felt his heart uplift when he saw the banners of the direwolf of House Stark ahead and the banners of his own house at the camp. Brandon was waiting for him at the edge of the camp. You mad fucker. Do you have any idea how much Uncle Hellman wanted to kill me for letting you go alone? Brandon demanded as he slapped him across the head. You're still here, aren't you, cousin? You complain more than the last whore you fucked, on account of the size of your cock, Benfred replied. Shut up. Prydain, Uncle Hellman and all the lords are awaiting you in Prydain's tent, he said. Right, let's go, said Benfred before they walked together. Upon arriving, Benfred saw father, whom rushed up to him and hugged him tightly. You stupid boy. What in the seven hells were you thinking? Father demanded. I was only thinking of doing my duty, Father, Benfred replied before facing Prydain. Brandon told quite the story, Benfred. You saw their dragon? Asked Prydain. Aye, my prince. A lot bigger than the one you killed at Riverbend. He was roasting and eating roughly 24 cattle in its enclosure at their camp, he replied. You saw their camp? Asked Halric. Aye, my lord. Massive one, half the size of Barrowton. Dozens of noble banners could be seen everywhere for miles. There's got to be at least 100,000 of them. Banners of the Reach and the Crown Lands both, said Benfred. The Dragon Rider, did you see who it was? Asked Roose Bolton. Aye, my lord. A young prince with a crossbow, Benfred replied. Jaehaerys Targaryen and Mace Tyrell are in command then, my lords, my prince, said Willis Mandaily. Neither of whom have a reputation for winning battles. Mace Tyrell especially, said Ricard Karstark, at which all the northern lords laughed. But, my lords, they will have men among them who are skilled in both fighting battles and planning them. especially Randil Tali, said Arundane. That quietened down the most boisterous and loud of the lords of the north. How many infantry and cavalry do they have, young Tallheart? Asked Mance Rayder. About 80,000 infantry, 15,000 cavalry, and the rest are archers, my lord, replied Benfred. Not to mention their dragon, commented Joranos Magi. Benfred looked at Prydain as he glanced at the map of the Reach and thought about what Benfred had said. With Mace Tyrell and Jaehaerys Targaryen in command, it's actually a good thing for us, Clee commented. What makes you say that, Sir Wyn? Asked Jorah Mormont. My lord, the Southerners never say how it is, they hide everything behind flowery speech. Those two aren't soldiers or commanders. And no man, not even Randil Tali, would be man enough to tell them that whatever plans they have for battle are shit and stupid, Clee explained. You make a good point, Clee. I know how we will crush the bastards, Prydain said, finally looking up. Chapter 54, Wolves, Dragons and Roses. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Loras 8. Our surviving scouts have located the Northern Army, my prince, said Uncle Baylor Hightower. Surviving scouts? Have they been getting themselves killed, the fools? Demanded Jaehaerys as he examined his newly polished crossbow by a team of servants. In a way, yes, my prince. Many of our scouting parties have been discovered killed, and eaten. Packs of wolves seem to be protecting the Northern Army, as though by some magic spell, Uncle Baylor explained. Eaten? Is this how the Starks win their battles? By letting loose packs of wolves to slaughter good men just doing their duty, and in doing so, causing chaos and mayhem. Is their army now ready to face ours, Sir Baylor? Asked Randil Tali. It is, my lord. They march to fight us. They will be here by nightfall, explained Uncle Baylor. The fools. If they so wish to die, then we will not keep them waiting, said Jaehaerys with a malicious grin. We are to fight them tomorrow then, my prince? Asked father. We shall, Lord Tyrell. We will at last crush all the northern savages and make them rue the day they crossed into the south, and bring justice to House Targaryen and to House Lannister. Prydain Stark will burn for what he did to my uncles and to the ancestral seat of my mother's family. I see. And the plan, my prince? For the battle? Randil Tali asked, whom was holding his tongue remarkably well, Loras thought. Mathis Rowan, it seemed, was biting his lips as if to stop him from speaking freely with his uncouth tongue. We will gather all of our infantry into one massive formation and have our cavalry placed on both flanks, so their cavalry cannot flank our infantry. The army advances to crush them, and just as they are distracted by you marching toward them, I will ride Carnaxes and burn through them. As many of them burn, the rest of the army will crush the bastard savages, he said with such pomposity as if this plan was the height of battlefield genius, and he had a cruel grin, as though he looked forward to the thought of burning thousands of men. A fine plan, my prince. One I would expect nothing less from a prince as brave or as daring as you, said father. Father, be quiet. Don't embarrass House Tyrell in front of our bannermen. Loras could barely keep looking up at his father and his future good brother, and instead looked down at the ground and cringed. My thanks, my lord, said Jaehaerys, his ego stroked to the extent that he held his head up high. What of Prydain Stark, my prince? Do you want him taken prisoner or killed? Asked Mathis Rowan, at last speaking after keeping quiet for a long time. Jaehaerys paused and considered this for a moment before he replied. I want him taken prisoner. But, if it is I that meets him personally on the field of battle, I will be the one to kill him, he vowed. So, if he meets you, you want the glory of killing him rather than letting anyone else kill him, Loras deduced. But Loras was under no illusions. He knew that this would be no easy battle. The Northern Army had won a large string of victories in the last war and now in this one. And Prydain Stark had gained a reputation as that of one of the greatest warriors in the realm. Jaehaerys had no such reputation. Loras walked to his tent and saw Geriant already there, polishing his breastplate. Loras noticed how his sword was already sharpened and ready for battle. You're dismissed, Geriant, Loras said. Sir Loras, asked Geriant. Go and be with your brothers and your father. I need some peace and quiet, Loras explained. Very good, sir. I'll see you in the morning, Geriant said, bowing his head to Loras. Loras nodded in thanks, and as he left, He walked to his bed, where under the pillow he kept the knapsack containing all the letters Renly had sent him. He opened the most recent one, and whilst he was happy to read his love's words, he was sad at how the war had separated them and that his brothers now waged war on House Targaryen. Loras, my love. My heart will always belong to you, but I was born a Baratheon and my loyalty is to my house and to my family. I am sorry that this must come between us, but I could never betray my family. But in spite of all this, I pray that this war may soon end for our Sake as well as the entirety of Westeros, that good men might not have to fight and die for the Game of Thrones to be played. I pray for the Seven to keep you safe, my love, and that we may see each other again when this war finally ends. I will always love you. Renly. Loras ran his fingers over the parchment, as though trying to imagine Renly standing before him. And I will always love you, Renly, Loras thought. He tucked the parchment back into the envelope and put it with the others back into his knapsack. Loras woke up the next day to see Geriant brushing Gallant and petting his handsome head before putting Loras' saddle on his back. You're a handsome horse, aren't you, Gallant? Geriant asked Gallant as he stroked him. Handsome and brave. No knight could ask for a better horse, Loras commented as he joined them. Sir Loras, are you ready to be armored? Geriant asked. I am, yes, Loras confirmed with a nod. Geriant put his brush away and rushed back into the tent and helped Loras dress into his chainmail, greaves, boots, breastplate, gauntlets, and then held his saddle steady whilst Loras climbed onto Gallant. Sir Loras. Loras turned to face the one whom called his name, Sir Hugo Berenda, the captain of House Tyrell's household troops. Sir Hugo. Loras asked as he rode toward Loras. Your Lord Father calls for all nobles to join him. The army forms now to march on the Northerners, Sir Hugo explained. Are the Northerners waiting for us? Loras asked. They are. 50,000 men, all waiting for us on the plains next to the keep of Beloe, he explained. I am ready. I am ready for battle and to kill in the name of House Tyrell and crush these northern invaders whom would dare to invade the Reach. Loras followed several groups of knights whom rode for the front of the army. Loras joined Garland and Father at the front of the army. Where is the prince? Asked Loras. He waits for the signal, Loras. When we march on the northern formations, Garland will blow his horn and that will signal the prince to burn the northerners, and then we might finally cleanse our home of these damned savages, Father said proudly. Loras nodded, but his attention was changed from his father to an eagle when he heard it screech above him. Loras looked up at a nearby tree to see an eagle looking down at them and screeching once again before flying away. For some reason, Loras kept his eyes trained on the eagle, for it seemed to look at them strangely when it remained stood on the branch. It was 4 hours before they reached the outskirts of Beloe, and upon seeing the quaint and peaceful keep, Loras could see the northern army. He looked around at the many banners, including the most predominant one, the leaping and snarling direwolf of House Stark. Loras turned to Father and Garland, and he could see how troubled Garland looked as he looked at the northern army and its banners. Garland, are you well? Loras asked. I'm fine, brother. It's just bad memories of Greywater, Garland replied, saying the last part quietly. Looking at Father, Loras could sense that he felt the same as Garland by looking at the assembled army of Northerners and their Dornish and Volantene allies. Why is their army shaped so strangely? Mathis Rowan asked. What do you mean, Lord Rowan? Asked Daikon. Their army is shaped in a formation like a crescent moon or a bow, he pointed out. Looking at the formation more closely, Loras could see that the Lord of Golden Grove was right. To keep a tighter formation, Elwood Meadows suggested. Or to flank our infantry when we charge at them, Randall Tarly surmised. Loras turned to Father, whom drew his sword. The plan doesn't change. We march for them. Are the cavalry in formation? Father asked. They are, my lord, replied Uncle Baylor. Loras looked around to see one formation of 8,000 cavalry on the eastern flank and another 7,000 on the western flank. But before Garland could reach for his own war horn, another could be heard. Its blast and the sound it made was long and loud and came from the northern army. What are they doing? Uncle Baylor wondered. His question was answered when a large formation of northern cavalry, led by a man underneath the green banner of a black bear, riding toward the army's western flank. Chase after them. Do not let them get into formation to flank our infantry upon the charge. Randil Tali shouted. Lord Tali, the prince's orders were to not let the cavalry break formation, snapped Subarman Byrch. If we let them get away, what happened at Greywater will happen here, snapped the Lord of Hornhill, snarling as he faced the drunk oaf of a former jouster. Merely saying the name of Greywater had made up father's mind. Sir Baylor. Subarman. Loras. You will lead the cavalry and destroy their cavalry. As swiftly as you can, father commanded. Loras rode alongside Uncle Baylor as they led the cavalry and knights of the Reach to pursue after the northern cavalry. As they chased after them, Loras looked at the man whom was leading them, and rode underneath the banner of House Mormont of Bear Island. That must be Lord Jorah Mormont, Loras surmised. They chased after them for what seemed like a few leagues, until Loras heard screams from behind him. He glanced around and saw dozens of cavalry and knights fall from their horses with arrows protruding from their bodies. Fuck. Horse archers. Loras held his shield up in time to block 2 arrows. Hold. Hold. Uncle Baylor commanded. Charge the southern fuckers, came a shout from the northerners. Loras glanced the side of his shield to see Jorah Mormont lead cheering northern cavalry towards them. But what Loras hadn't been expecting was infantry charging straight at them from both flanks. These infantry didn't look northern nor Dornish. They wore cloaks of tiger pelts and Isozi leathers and chainmail, and had various ink drawings carved on their skin. Their weaponry ranged from swords, spears, axes, hammers, maces, arcs and even falxes. The tiger cloaks of Volantis, Loras realized as he threw down his lance and drew his sword. Form up. For King Roraga, men. Subarman shouted before he charged straight toward Jorah Mormont with a lance. Mormont threw his shield toward Byrch, it flew through the air at Byrch, whom fell down from his horse, snapping his lance in half as he fell. Many of the northerners laughed as Mormont beheaded Byrch with one slice of his shiny and glimmering bastard sword. Loras rode towards northern cavalry alongside Uncle Baylor, and Loras stabbed a northern horseman before he could thrust his lance toward him. He wrenched his sword out and sliced across at another as he raised his sword to cut down onto Loras' helm. Loras blocked a blow from another's axe. He struck his sword down onto the axe, disarming him before he sliced his throat. Loras turned to his right when he could see a tiger cloak sliced down his falx onto the neck of a horse, carrying a knight of House O'Kurt. The knight fell and stood to face the tiger cloak whilst his horse's blood had drenched his armor. The tiger cloak chopped the knight in half. Loras climbed down from his horse and charged at that tiger cloak. The tiger cloak blocked Loras' thrust with his falx expertly and with discipline. He rained his falx down onto his shield, until an enormous crack began to spread through the entire shield. As he felt the shield fall from his hand, Loras used this chance to thrust at the tiger cloak's throat. He did not scream nor show any sign of pain. Instead he spat his own blood at Loras' face before punching Loras once and then again. He stopped as Loras pulled his sword from out of his throat and then collapsed to the ground. Loras looked up to see half of the knights and cavalry of the Reach and Crown lands were dead or wounded, and those whom weren't were now surrounded by the northerners and the tiger cloaks, whom held their ground, waiting for the order to finish them off, it seemed to Loras. Yet again, southerners, you lose to the might of the north, said a grinning and handsome young northern lord whom wore a cloak with a shark sigil on it. Just looking at him reminded Loras of when he saw Arthur Dane at a tourney in Highgarden when he was a boy. Arto Seastook of Wolf's Den, brother of the Dragonspan, Loras realized. You've won nothing, Seastook. Prince Jaehaerys is here with his dragon Carnaxes. He will burn your entire army, Loras replied with a grin. But he didn't like his reply. Why is he smiling? You mean that dragon up there, you pretty little rose, he asked, pointing at the sky behind Loras with a blooded Valyrian steel bastard sword. Loras turned around and could see Jaehaerys fly Carnaxes toward the northern army just as the infantry marched towards the northerners. But before the great and immersive dragon could breathe the fires of the seven hells on them, a command was given behind the northern infantry and what seemed like over 20 ballista fired at the dragon as it flew directly above the northerners. Arto Seastook led the northerners in laughing at the dragon as it screeched loudly and terribly. Fuck. Without the dragon, they will kill thousands of our men before we are able to defeat them. Come, Loras. We must retreat. Uncle Baylor shouted from atop his horse. Lores cut down 2 northerners as he ran towards Gallant. He pulled himself up and urged Gallant on to catch up with Uncle Baylor and a few thousand remaining cavalry. Together, lads. For the north. The north remembers. Lores heard behind him, followed by the blast of a loud war horn. Prydain 15. The ballista firing on Carnaxes had shocked the southern infantry. I owe Auril a dozen barrels of Carhold bronze for this, Prydain thought as he unsheathed ice. Brace yourselves, northerners. Whatever they throw at you, you will hold the line. You see how weak and stupid their dragons are to the might of the north. So let them come. Let them come and taste our northern steel. Prydain called as he raised ice in the air. The men cheered and many began to chant Dragonspan. 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 Dragonspan.